Good afternoon and welcome to the NRG Championship Top 4. Devin O'Donnell's joining me here to pick up coverage. I know yesterday I promised you Jesse Robkin and Emma Partlow, and instead you're stuck with us for the moment. But we've still got great magic for you. We've still got great players competing for a Pro Tour invite and a return bid. And Devin, I mean, stakes are real here. Stakes are high, and these players have got to be nervous, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This is where it all comes down to. You got to put your money where your mouth is. We have Raz Solomon, our defending champion, all the
Yeah.
way into stage 4, has the chance to run the back-to-backs, and a really amazing story. And then we have Jonathan Hobbs and Matthew Hoey and Steven Dykman. Dykman has just been the best player on the tour the entire year, and this is how the matchups are going to be going. We have Dykman against Hoey, and we're going to be starting with Hobbs against Raja. So just 4 amazing competitors, and this is going to be a treat, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's put up what's still at stake, what they're playing for. In addition to cash and return invite, we also have the Pro Tour invite. And so I said yesterday we had 4 players coming into the event that already had Pro Tour invites. None of these 4. So all 4 of them, it's not going to pass down. All 4 of them in the running for the Pro Tour Chicago invite, which is a handful of miles away from their Rage headquarters. So local trip or a driving trip for everybody involved. And yeah, I mean, this is a lot. This is the point where, like, for me personally, I get nervous at the very beginning of the event and at the very end of the event. And this is the point at the end where I'm nervous.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Pro Tour invite in Chicago, where we have that event that's going the week before Chicago in Chicagoland, and that's really going to shape the metagame for the Pro Tour format, because the Pro Tour is Pioneer, where we have a 10K Pioneer Showdown on Saturday, and then even on Sunday, the standard 5K, we have that massive, I think like 75K, which is going to be held in the Chicago, alongside the Pro Tour, and both of these events are really going to be shaping the metagame for that, and we're going to see some really good players that we don't often see at the NRG events.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be a tough competition. But if you want to come show up to this event, the Pioneer Showdown on Saturday, the winner auto qualifies, I believe, for the NRG Championship again at the end of the year. So if you want to get started on the points race, or you want to take a shot at auto invite and coming to this event next year, that's your first opportunity to do it. I think all the players involved are happy to be here. I think the 4 players still here are thrilled to be here. And let's kind of go over what we're going to see now. So we're entering stage 4. So things are going to be a little different than they've been up until this point. Instead of, as in the last 2 stages, the players were vetoing formats. Now they're playing all the formats. So we've got, even though it's just top 4 and finals, we've got a lot of magic left for you. Players will sit down for the match. They'll play best 2 out of 3 formats. And winner moves on. So is there anything to this? Anything? Probably nothing significant, Devin. Like, do you want to play your best format first? Do you want to save it for the end? Is it about momentum? You just want to get comfortable? Any thoughts on that at all?
Kind of depends on how you perceive the matchups. Like, for example, if you have a specific format that you think you're a favorite on the play or the draw, if that matchup is that lopsided, you probably want to save that one for last, or maybe you even lead with that one to get a head start. But yeah, for as far as the higher seed, so if for match 1, the higher seed is going to pick a format, and then they get their choice of play draw in game 1. For the second match, the lower seed is going to choose either of the remaining 2 formats and gets their choice of play and draw. And then if we need to, when we go to match 3, the remaining format with the higher seed will choose play or draw in game 1. So yeah, that is the format, a really exhilarating thing. And you mentioned we're going to get to see a lot of different formats on here. Kind of interesting, the first couple of matches in stage 3 that we covered earlier this morning, a lot of standard was being played. So maybe people not necessarily as confident in their Pioneer or Modern matchups. Well, they're going to have to be now.
Yeah, or it could be, this is something that we talked about yesterday. Mostly on the series, players are playing Pioneer and Modern. So in order to prepare for this event, everyone was playing Standard because that's not what they had experience with. So maybe that's just fresh in their minds. That's what they feel now prepared for. Anyway, we're going to go into the table and go over the power rankings when they're ready. But we're starting with Jonathan Hobbs and Raza Suleiman, who, like you said, won last year, so has experience in this type of event. Hobbs also has been around for a while in the Midwest, put up a lot of good finishes over the years. And here you see Raja Suleiman, who our power rankings had 3rd overall, and who was, and by virtue of being the defending champion, not required to show his stuff on the series this year, and so maybe didn't attend all the events. And so you see his Pioneer and Modern ratings aren't super high, but you can see the ELO project and his peers rate him very strong.
Yeah, the ELO project, I believe that is the like the sort of the rating system. I know that
Mhm.
you and I have been around a long time, so we're familiar with the DCI and how the rating system used to work, and I think that's kind of the sort of a combination of that, or that sort of taken into effect. And then the peer rankings, we asked 6 players who were just outside of this year's championship what they thought, how they would rank the particular players, and Raja coming in third here. And if we can maybe take a look at Jonathan Hobbs to see where Jonathan, and see 14th here in the power rankings, 11th in Pioneer, 14th in Modern, 14th in elimination wins, and then 8th apiece in ELO project and pure rankings. So if you're just going by power rankings specifically, this is a bit of an uphill battle here for Jonathan Hobbs.
I mean, it is, but again, like, I built the power rankings, so how reliable actually are they? Unclear. Jonathan, maybe not as much of a regular on the series. The first couple of categories, based on strength of finish this year. So if you don't attend very many events, it's not going to be very high. But the finishing in the middle of the pack in pure ranking and ELO project, he's obviously got a lot of capacity here, and he's been around old Star City events towards the end of the Star City era. He was showing up there, putting up good finishes, so no slouch here, and I'm sure he'll put Raja to the test. As we can see, the players are getting ready. I wonder if we have word yet on what format they're starting with. You see,
Trying to see if I
Jonathan.
can, yeah, trying to see if I can get a good look at what Jonathan was shuffling. I couldn't
Yeah.
quite get a good look at what format that is, but if we could take a look, kind of give you an idea. So as far as match, oh, it looks like we're starting with Modern. So
Okay.
as far as the Modern seed, let me go ahead and pull up those deck lists. So we have Jonathan Hobbs on Rakdos mid range, which I don't know if we're allowed to say the word scam, but I'm going to use it
Say it.
anyways.
Sure.
Rakdos scam, and then Raja is going to be piloting Azorius Control with Kahira. So if we say Azorius, there are a couple of Omnaths in Raja's deck. So this is a fairly common matchup in the format. I think I like the Rakdos side of things, but Raja definitely came prepared. We got some One Rings and some Solitude, so it should be a very, very interesting matchup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one thing about the Modern deck lists that were submitted. There weren't any extreme outliers, any super fringe decks. So a consequence of that is whatever these players are facing, like you said right here, control versus the scam decks, is something that you should be prepared for. You should have both players should have experience playing this matchup. So we should see navigating kind of expected threats, not why you be walking into blowouts that you wouldn't anticipate, because you do have experience here. The players are looking at deck list. Jonathan looks. There may be cards shared between decks here.
Oh,
So
okay.
Jonathan, face up, looking at his entire deck here, there might be swaps, especially with lands, maybe between this and the other formats. So taking a moment to get this right.
Yeah,
Or
it's funny because
yeah, go ahead.
Hobbs is playing Rakdos in both Modern and
Mhm.
Pioneer, and there are a decent amount of shared cards, right? Like the Thoughtseizes, the Shieldrids, Blood Tithe I guess not Blood Tithe Harvesters, but Thoughtseizes, Shieldrids, things along that lines, maybe some lands too. So yeah, could be something along those lines. But yeah, as far as the matchup is concerned, it does look like Hobbs is maybe a little bit slightly more prepared than traditional as far as the main deck. We got a Magus of the Moon in the main deck, along with a Seasoned Pyromancer. And
Let's pop it up. Let me cut you off here. Let's go ahead and pop up the deck list right now while you're talking through it, if we have it for Jonathan Hobbs's Modern deck, and then go ahead and continue on.
Yeah, so just like, as far as the cards that we want to look out for in this particular matchup, if we do see them, that one Magus on the Moon, Raja's mana base is not, it's a little greedy. We'll say that as far as a blue-white control deck, because they are, blue-white control double splashing. So going to be looking out for that. The traditional Grief, Not Dead After All starts, obviously going to be looking for those. And then Dothy Voidwalker is potentially a powerful card here, because if you can play a Dothy Voidwalker and say take something like a One Ring or some potential powerful card, then you can get that yourself. So yeah, definitely want to be looking towards that. But I do think I favor Hobbs slightly, at least in a game one situation.
All right, let's go ahead and look at Raja's 4-ish color control deck and how it may stand up here against the pressure that Jonathan's going to bring. I mean, the scam decks can get rolling rather quickly with either Ragavan or turn one grief. And so there are early answers. I mean, we see Solitude obviously can answer anything on the first turn. Prismatic Ending can answer the Ragavan half at least, and then just try and get rolling towards the later game.
Yeah, leyline binding, another important aspect here. So,
Mhm.
if there is an opening hand grief plus not that after all, you can maybe fetch a triumph, fetch a second triumph, be able to answer that on turn two. That's going to be a pretty important part. But then, as I talked about, if you go for that line where you go triumph binding, and Jonathan does have the one Magus of the Moon,
Mhm.
that could be kind of lights out if there isn't a follow up Solitude or something like that.
That could be problematic. Yeah. Okay. Looks like opening hands are being drawn. Let's go ahead and get to the table and begin the top four, stage 4 of the Nerd Rage 2023 Championship. Jonathan Hobbs is the higher seed, and so on the play. So then we can probably assume that this is the format he wanted to go. He valued going first in the most because he did have the choice here, and on the board with turn one Ragavan.
And I think that does kind of make sense. If you look at the other matchups, we have Rakdos and Pioneer against Raja on Blue White Control and Pioneer, and then Standard, we have Esper against Golgari. So, I mean, I think you could maybe argue that the Standard matchup is close in terms of which one you'd rather be on the play. But as
Mhm.
far as the Grief Not Dead After All Ragavan deck versus realistically, the only good removal spell that Raja has access to on turn one is Prismatic Ending, because you don't really want to be firing off 2 cards to pitch to kill a Ragavan on turn one. That's
Right.
not a spot where you super want to be. So I think that does make sense here for Hobbs.
Okay, Ragavan comes across, and Raja is going to fire off a Solitude. Does not want Ragavan to flip off something like the Fairy Time Reveler on the second turn and just dramatically reduce his chances the rest of the game. So he's going to 2-for-1 himself. He did have Prismatic Ending, so just no untapped white source maybe.
Yeah, that's kind of tough. Raja, a
That
bunch of
hurts.
fetch lands and shock lands, and I did mention you don't want to Solitude the Ragavan, but you also don't want to get hit by that thing. You kind of have to. So there's a
Mhm.
follow-up Dothi Voidwalker here for Raja. That one's pretty good. Be able to, like I said, if Raja has something like a counterspell for Jonathan's 3-drop, then that counterspell going under the Voidwalker could be very, very relevant in future
Mhm.
turns.
All right, so Raja will contemplate his land drop here, which is tricky. I mean, there's a lot of these 4-color decks with Triomes, fetch lands. I mean, it takes some initial practice to figure out how you want to sequence these things, what turns you need domain, what mana you need available, and it's going to be breeding pool. So binding will now cost 2 if that's on tap.
You might be lining up like something like a second Prismatic Ending here. That's why he was
Mhm.
okay pitching the first one. And we do see that Prismatic Ending there. So, and as we mentioned, that Magus on the Moon, the Solitude's gone. If Jonathan has the one Magus, this game might just be as close to over. We have a 3-drop, but it's Fable. No Magus.
Okay. All right. Well, Fable's still a strong card, but yeah, maybe not ideal at this point for Hobbs, and no grief scam actions so far.
Yeah,
So
you could probably breathe a sigh of relief for Raja there.
Mhm.
You see Johnny tap 3 mana. It's like, oh no, is the game over? But
Yeah,
able to dodge a bullet there.
but
Fable's
just a
no
one
slouch
of, so yeah, yeah, absolutely. And Fable, obviously, a good at creating a board presence, good at cleaning up the hand, especially in game one. You haven't been able to sideboard out the cards you don't want. Jonathan can easily have removal. He's less than ideal here, so he can fix that up on his next draw step if allowed to.
Yeah, and Raja's just under the gun immediately. You see, even something like Teferi. Teferi can help clean up the Goblin Shaman token, but you still
Mhm.
have that Fable to be in, to have to answer. And looks like we're lining up a binding on the Fable that will stop Jonathan's loot productions. Not able to kind of filter through some cards, but can just cleanly attack in with the Shaman token, get another mana source, potentially hardcast a Grief this turn. Could even see maybe something like a double spell where you got Thoughtseize into another 3-drop. Just a lot of options here for Jonathan.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it looks like there are some land. There is a grief in hand for Jonathan, so hard casting that here. Um, a potential line here that's always appealing, getting that on the board, and obviously there are options. So Jonathan's thinking about this.
Yeah, I couldn't quite get a good look at the hand. I think it might have been a Takanuma in there as well. And okay, well, here is
Whoa.
the 1 ring, but there's actually the 2 rings. And Raja's hand being all banger 4-drops. This is not exactly the hand you wanted to see when you cast this grief, huh?
Yeah, although there's not a fourth land. So Jonathan, I mean, as much as everything in Magic, tends to end up mattering, this choice doesn't feel like it matters all that much. Eats Omnath or a copy of the ring, but really we're waiting to see if Raja can draw a land here.
Yeah, my guess is
And
probably the Omnath, just because
mhm,
the life gain from Omnath can sort of help offset those rings, and there's 2
yeah.
rings anyways, so, you figure if, worst case scenario for Jonathan, if Raja does find a land you don't wanna give him the option of playing those 4 drops because he's likely gonna go for ring first, and you still have to contend with the oh, there it is! There's the
Wow.
land for Raja, we certainly have a game now.
Yeah, we do have a game indeed, and maybe even is Raja just ahead now? As there's 5 power on the board, not going to do much. I guess we still get a treasure. And what is our follow up for Jonathan? It's okay. I mean, given that you can't interact with your opponent, Takanuma is not the worst thing to be doing.
Yep. So Takanuma, Jonathan doing this main phase because he wants to be able to hit a Voidwalker and replay it. Did hit the
Hmm.
Voidwalker and is going to replay it. Now, one thing worth noting, there are. If we take a look at Raj's deck list here, how many verdicts? We got 2 main deck verdicts, so that is something playing towards. Although notably, Island of Minamo breeding pool, so no second white yet for Raja, so that could be an issue.
It could be. We'll see. One ring tends to fix a lot of problems. There's 2 more cards incoming here. And Raja with lots of life to play with. There
And White
is,
Source, White
yeah.
Source acquired. So if we have the verdict, that's a nice little easy cleanup here for Raja. And yeah, it's only 2 lands under the Voidwalker right now, so nothing too crazy from that. But even if at the very least we know that Raja has a second ring. Now, something that you again, as we mentioned earlier, is that Voidwalker is kind of making things a little tricky. Where
Mhm.
Raja would normally, if the rest of his hand was bricked, he would want to just go second ring and then get that. But yeah, here's the verdict. That's a massive, massive swing here for Raja.
Yeah, ouch. All right. This is okay. There's not after all. That's something for Jonathan. Saving the actually, there's a choice here between Voidwalker and Grief, I suppose.
Yeah, you notice I actually saw he pointed to the Voidwalker and then kind of thought for a second. So
Mhm.
maybe interested in potentially saving the grief, but I think I kind of like saving the Voidwalker here because again the with Raja being able to deploy the second ring next turn, you can okay. Well, he's going to go for the grief, which actually does get the other ring.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, Raja picked up 2 other pretty good ones.
Yeah, this is rough. So Solitude, I mean, almost forced to take Solitude, leaving your opponent with an extra ring. That sucks, but Jonathan's working with what he's got here. So able to put a solid hit on Raja here, and then the ring is starting to tick down. Jonathan's still in this game, but it looks pretty scary.
Yeah, so Raja's going to fall to 7 this turn, likely going to activate. You could even see something like activate the ring, draw 3, Manamo untap the ring, pick up 4 more, play land 6, and deploy the second ring to kind of reset them. And that's, Joe, I don't know if you've ever drawn 7 cards in a single turn, but usually the game ends when that happens.
It's pretty good. We did see, I think, Raja draw 10 in a turn yesterday and lose, but that's obviously super desperation time. But yeah, this is so strong. Minamo kind of just thrown in these decks. I mean, there really wasn't seeing a lot of play in the format, I don't believe, until the One Ring printed. And now it's just, oh, casual extra activation. And yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, just like really, really helps you kind of go over the top when you're. There's always those spots where you kind of you untap with the ring and you're like, okay, I can draw 2 cards and maybe find something good. But when you turn 2 into 5, it just becomes
Mhm.
so much more powerful. Russia lining up 4 mana, so maybe not going for the Manamo untap. Okay, now we're lining up 2. See what we go for here. Interested to see if he's maybe thinking about untapping that ring. Because if we're lining up 2 blue, there's not a ton else that would be, right? Like
Mhm. Right.
Preordain, 1 mana, Lorien, all those are 1 mana. So I think we might be thinking about untapping the ring here.
Yeah, and that's what it's going to be. That's too much to give up. And okay, Jonathan, waiting in the wings. Wow,
Wow,
really nice.
interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, the patience from Jonathan. I mean, we knew about the subtlety, so
Mhm.
it kind of does make sense because if he goes for the Bowmaster immediately, it's just going to get subtletied. So maybe waiting for Raja to get a little bit greedier,
Mhm.
and is going to put that Bowmaster on top. That would have been a massive swing if Raja maybe didn't find a blue card there. But did able to untap the ring, and then we'll see if we I assume we found land 4. It'd be pretty hard not to after drawing 7 cards
Yeah.
to deploy that second ring, because with the ring on 4, that's where it gets a little dicey, right? With Raj on 7, take 4, go to 3, and that the chip damage really adds up at that point.
Instead, we're going to see a Misty Rainforest here, probably looking for a basic. Yes, indeed. So say it's 6. Replace the ring, and, well, it's going to be tough for Jonathan Hobbs to close here. Raja with a full hand and Jonathan on empty, drawing Bowmaster.
And Jonathan wisely going to cast this Bowmaster main phase while Raja's tapped out, so no counter spell available. And we've already gone through 2 Solitudes, so may not be able to answer it at instant speed, but does still have a couple of prismatic endings left over and the leyline bindings as well.
All right, Raja will need something here, but you notice he didn't. He chose not to reactivate the fresh ring, so it doesn't get that extra clock started himself, and honestly probably has plenty of cards to work with as it is.
Yeah, looks like Raja cracking a Flooded Strand here, thinking about what land to get. I do see another Solitude in Raja's hand. Can't quite get a glimpse of what the rest of the contents are, but I know there's at least a Solitude. And yeah, looks like Raja's lining up a couple of mana here, maybe a Prismatic Ending. Yep, Prismatic Ending on the Bowmaster, so that'll unlock maybe a ring activation here if Raja so chooses. And worth noting, Raja does not want to fire off that ring.
All right. Thoughtseize leads to, Solitude wipes out Grief, and now Jonathan with a 1/1 army, not even able to attack through Solitude. Looks pretty grim here. Raja's hand, Jonathan's like, all right, I've seen enough.
Well, there you go. That's going to be Raja winning game number 1 over Jonathan Hobbs. I mean, that was pretty much exactly what we would have expected, right? Just like Jonathan was able to kind of set up that grief where we were able to grief one of the payoffs. But unfortunately for Jonathan at that time, there was just too many 4-drops and wasn't able to kind of take them all, and then eventually lost to one of the resolved 4-drops.
Right. It really came down to Raja needing untapped land off the top on turn 4, and it was there, which, I mean, there's a lot of land in these decks. The odds may have been in his favor, but for Jonathan's perspective, that was unfortunate. Okay, so game 1 of Modern in the books. Let's go ahead and bring the deck list back up. We can talk through sideboarding, see how things change. But for Jonathan Hobbs, presumably having the choice, this being the format he chose, he wanted to go on the play game 1 and taking the loss there. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a situation where maybe Jonathan didn't like the matchup as much, and he figured his best chance was to kind of maybe steal a game where he was in the play with the Grief Not Dead after all. As far as sideboards are concerned, I like this Magus of the Moon. That one seems pretty okay, along with this other copy of Blood Moon. I think those are kind of slam dunks. The Pithing Needle to help stop the One Ring. Those 3 probably coming in along with the Shieldred. Past those 4, I don't think you really want to go towards Engineered Explosives. No really targets there. You could maybe consider Kolaghan's Command, but the issue there is a lot of Raja's removal spells exile, so you're not getting a ton back off K Command.
Right. It's basically a verdict, and there's not a full set of those. There's also, I mean, is it possible you bring in Bone Crusher to turn off damage prevention from the ring, or are you really just playing that against the decks with cheaper creatures? I don't really know why that's in the deck, but it is versatile, so maybe we see it.
No, that's actually a good point. Yeah, Bone Crusher. I always forget that random line of text on it, the damage prevention. But yeah, if your opponent rings and you Bone Crusher either yourself or one of your creatures, because obviously you can't target them, then the damage prevention from the ring would go away for that turn. So that's a good call. That one probably will come in just because it's one of Jonathan. Like if a ring hits the table and Raja's at anything above 7 or 8 life, it feels really hard to kind of lose that game from there. And Bone Crusher is a way to steal a game if that happens.
All right, let's go ahead and look at Raja's deck list. Control, experienced mage. In fact, brought control in multiple formats this weekend. We see the modern version here. We saw him play yesterday in some pretty lengthy blue-white mirrors. Not the case here, but certainly lots of tools, although we're going to see the other half of it, other part of the sideboard here. Stern Scoldings, when it was printed, seemed like at least to me, kind of an awkward card. Like, what is this really good against? But pretty strong here, I would think.
Really, really good in this matchup. If you look at Jonathan's creatures, you got Ragavan, Orcish Bowmasters, Dothy Voidwalker, and even something all the way up the curve to Grief, able to
Mhm.
answer every single one of those for 1 mana. So those are probably slam dunks. The Veil of Summer is really good against Thoughtseize and Grief, so those ones probably going to come in here. Additional counter spells, you could maybe consider these Dovin's Vetoes. There's primary targets like Fable the Mirror Breaker and the One Blood Moon, but it's not a ton of stuff past that, so maybe you don't want those. Dress down, force of negation. I don't think those are what these matchups are for. So the Veils, the Scolding's probably good. Maybe a copy of Veto, maybe not. But past that, I think that's really all Raj is looking for.
Yeah, okay. And there's definitely some easy cuts here. I don't think Chalice of the Void are sticking in to go get put on one, especially going second. That seems unlikely. So I'm sure he can figure out the rest of his cuts. I'm sure he knows them without even thinking about it. Counter spells going second is maybe a little mediocre, but we could still see it potentially.
I kind of don't hate the counter spells even going second because
Yeah,
Jonathan is bringing in more 3 drops. We talked
yeah.
about the Magus and the Blood Moon, still has the Fables in, so it's a little bit awkward against like the turn 1 grief draws because they see the counter spell, they can play around it, maybe they don't even need to take it. But yeah, against those 3 drops, I think it is worth it, and the Shield Rit too. So we want to consider that.
All right, so we're getting ready for game 2 of Modern here. Jonathan is presenting. Raja is just about to do the same, so we'll go back to the table. Thanks for being with us here. I know there's options on what you could be doing, including the last week of the NFL season, but you're here joining us. We appreciate that.
Speaking of NFL, I got a little parlay action. I don't want to I don't want to spoil it too much, but we got a parlay. Anyways, we don't need to talk about that.
We can talk about that on the breaks. I'm curious.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna have Jonathan on the play here against Raja. Now a lot of what people associate this Rakdos deck with the turn 1 grief not dead after all. Jonathan did not have that in game number 1, but we will have to see. I see a grief. I don't know if I see the not dead after all. A couple of Ragavans, I think, as well in Jonathan's hand, but not entirely sure if there is that not dead. We are going to keep it, and we start off with a Blood Crypt and a Ragavan. And now, last game, Raja had to answer this with a Solitude, and yet here we have the Prismatic ending, so I don't have to 2-for-1 ourselves this time.
But here we have the backup, like you said. So it's going to be. Oh, and there is a rebirth in hand. So no dash here. Jonathan wants to stay on the board.
And I think I did see a grief in Jonathan's hand. So with that, the grief and the rebirth, I wonder if there's maybe just no additional black cards. That could certainly be a possibility because, like I said, I'm pretty sure I definitely saw the grief in hand. So we have another prismatic ending to answer the second Ragavan and see if Jonathan can find that black card. Yeah, there's definitely a grief in there for sure.
Okay, so options then would be. I mean, there may be 3 drops. Like, okay, so maybe there's not a black card, like you're saying. Maybe there's just a 3 drop Jonathan prefers. Okay, Voidwalker's gonna, and Voidwalker into grief is a great combination. So obviously, black cards are limited here. And Jonathan will
Yeah.
hope this doesn't get Stern Scolding.
Yeah, that would be the worst case scenario, or even subtlety. I mean, but
Yeah.
Jonathan's leftover, I think Jonathan's leftovers are land plus Malakir rebirth. So even if this gets subtlety, like and here is the subtlety. He kind of has to put that on bottom. I guess you could draw it and then hardcast it next turn, but is that really where you want to be? So tough decision here for Jonathan.
Yeah, it may be difficult. I don't know if you have the ability to hardcast on next turn. I think that's probably what you go with. It still stops Raja's turn 4 One Rings if there's something like that in hand or Omnath. And if you bottom this and you're stuck and you have Malakir Rebirth, like what are you hoping to draw really?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, he seems unsure of himself, but he's going to keep it.
He is going to keep it. I'm trying to think of cards that would potentially be better than Grief here, like maybe Fable the Mirror Breaker, maybe one of the Moon Effects, and Raja looks like we're passing without a land drop here. So I guess the nice thing about topping it is you can kind of choose whether you want to keep it based on what Raja does. He's with that Bloodstained Mire in place, so kind of keeping the option open. And we see Jonathan thinking about fetching away this Grief here. He's not sure of himself.
That does make the decision easier. It's good that you pointed that out, having the fetch line to be able to decide later. And now, it's interesting that what Jonathan's other. Okay, he's going to get rid of it. Wow. I don't know for sure what Jonathan's cards are, but if you're right, this land rebirth, I'm going to say I'm surprised.
Yeah, I know for sure I saw Rebirth. I couldn't quite tell. Yeah, Jonathan's got a lot of alt art, so it's kind of hard to see. What I want to see is shuffle away the grief. Raja cuts, shuffles, and then Jonathan just draws the grief anyways.
Sure. So maybe there's potential there's not an untapped land in Jonathan's hand, because that would be certainly a reason to pitch it, but he might have bought it in the first place then. Let's find out.
Let's see. Potentially looking, like you said, for one of those 3 drops. Fable the Mirror Breaker, Blood Moon, Magus, all pretty good here. Dothy, pretty good here. There's a Polluted Delta. Yeah, not entirely sure if that was in the hand prior or if that was the draw step.
Okay, Raja misses again.
And let's see what kind of follow-up here that Jonathan may or may not have. Okay, there's a Dothy. That might be running into a counter spell. Raja says, okay.
All right, that's going to be at least a sigh of relief for Hobbs a little bit. Well, it's going to get vaporized immediately. And now we can see the rest of the hand. It's Lightning Bolt and Malakir Rebirth. So Hobbs looking for board presence here.
And that Malakir Rebirth, not the greatest against these prismatic endings and solitudes. Really wanted to line up that Rebirth with the grief, but yeah, that subtlety might be the difference this game. That was the really backbreaking subtlety. Like, you can imagine if that subtlety was, say, a counterspell when Raja only had 1 mana up and that grief resolved, and the Not Dead After All also resolved, or the Malakir Rebirth rather, excuse me. This is a much different game because prismatic ending can't go after the grief. There may not be a solitude, or you could have even taken the solitude with the grief. So yeah, this is this game could have been a lot worse if Raja did not have that subtlety. Now, Raja's still missing some land drops, so there is, a little bit of hope for Hobbs fans out there, but, it really needs to find a threat because all Raja really wants, rather, is time, right? Raja's advantage in the long game.
Certainly is, and Hobbs just needs anything, and I can't find it. Raja with the Hallowed Fountain tapped last turn, debated whether to shock then or not, decided to save the life. All right, 2 draws in a row. Although, I mean, 2 colors short here, so Omnath uncastable at the moment, but I'm sure Raja will accept that bargain for being able to actually have 4 land.
This is the true Azorius deck. Raja actually sideboarded into Azorius. Maybe he cut all the Omnaths.
Now has found a counter spell, so boom. Oh, I'm sorry. So thought that he's not going to resolve.
There's a Raveler.
Yeah.
Can maybe cash it in for an extra card immediately. Maybe can go upstairs. Cashing it in for a card immediately could be a little awkward if Hobbs does find a Bowmaster, because that can kind of cleanly answer it. But Raja maybe wants to find a little bit more gas. Does end up drawing a card here, and we'll have to see what Hobbs can find. We know about the Bulb. We know about the Rebirth.
Found the Magus of the Moon, but I mean, honestly, it's not even going to make Leyline Binding more expensive. That's unusual.
yeah, because we
actually makes it cheap. It makes it cheaper because Raja picks up a mountain. Nothing working exactly according to plan here for Jonathan Hobbs in game 2, or even in the whole match. But we'll see if he can manage to fight through that.
Okay, we're going to start with a Bolt on Teferi, really respecting that, and then see if the Magus as the follow-up. Just thinking about it. What does Jonathan want to do here? I think there's a Not Dead and a Rebirth in hand now too. Those are not looking super hot here.
All right, so there's a land, there's a Magus, able to protect it from a Supreme Verdict, which Raja can't currently cast, but you may as well give yourself the opportunity. And
as you mentioned, this Magus of the Moon making the Leyline Binding cost less mana. That's pretty funny.
I mean, you're sitting in Jonathan Hobbs' chair right now. You know you're in trouble. You know you're behind. You're just hoping. Maybe my opponent is stuck. Maybe they don't have whatever they need. There's Teferi to pick the Magus up. I don't even know if that's necessarily better than it getting leyline binding because Raja picks up a card.
Also pretty funny that the Magus of the Moon just saved Raja 2 life, able to sneak the breeding
Yeah.
pool in, then play the Teferi and still have counterspell available. So
Yeah.
yeah, nothing really going according to plan here for Hobbs.
Raja just styling on him at this point. Okay, yeah, that was a confident casting of another Magus of the Moon. Jonathan Hobbs, okay, throw this back on the board, do your worst, which is probably going to be pretty bad.
It's not even clear that Raja cares that much about this.
I
Magus.
know.
He's got an island in a play. He's got a active Teferi in play, can still binding it. You could even see like a cheeky play where maybe Jonathan draws a good card, goes to cast it. Roger says, okay, response, binding your Magus, then have counterspell available, kind of like to mask it a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, Raja definitely in the driver's seat. Last game we was kind of decided by the One Ring. Doesn't quite have that, but doesn't necessarily need it. We're just ahead on a lot of different metrics here.
Yeah, Hobbs knows what's up as Raja figures out how he wants to tap, but this is the binding that you mentioned, and Hobbs kind of shuffling the cards back and forth in his hands, like, yeah, none of these are all that great. Okay, well, Shieldred is good.
Okay. Got the binding out of Raja's hand. Let's see if we have another answer. Something like a Solitude or another binding. Looks like a Solitude.
Ouch.
And Jonathan has had enough.
All right, well, certainly not the way Jonathan wanted this semifinal match to start, but Raja Suleiman has to be thrilled picking up the match on the draw. Means he only has to win one of the remaining two formats, Pioneer or Standard. And that was pretty clean. Raja, okay, maybe there was some fear, like, am I going to draw the lands or not? In both games that came up, but it worked out.
Yeah, the more I think about it, maybe I'm wondering Hobbs maybe thought that might have been his worst matchup and thought that his only chance in Modern was the fact that he was on the play and could maybe sneak in a Grief Not Dead after all. And, that's kind of what happens when the scam deck doesn't have the scam, is it plays like a more traditional mid-range deck, but if you have enough answers to the threats, it doesn't really have as good of a long game as something as the 4-color deck with One Ring and Omnath and all that kind of stuff. And that's basically exactly what you saw there. Raja was just able to cleanly answer all the threats and pretty easily dispatch Hobbs.
Yeah. Okay. So that's going to take care of the first format. We're just going to step away for a minute and swap commentators. Devin, thank you for covering. Good job this morning. And we will see you back in the future.
It's a pleasure to be here. And thanks again for having me. And I will see you guys next time.
All right. We'll be back with Jesse Robkin on the other side and continue this top 4 coverage of the Nerd Rage 2023 Championship. Stick around. All right, we're back here with Jesse Robkin for the first time on the NRG Series on this side of things. Good morning. Welcome.
Hello. Yeah, morning.
Well, for me.
For you, okay. Yeah, early afternoon.
Yeah, whatever. It's some time zone everywhere in the world. All right, we're back for the still in the top somewhere. 4 of the Nerd Rage Championship. We got Raja Suleiman up a format against Jonathan Hobbs. Raja now has the choice and has chosen to play Standard with himself going first here. And Jesse, you said briefly during the break, you feel like this makes sense given the match, given the decks.
Yeah, I have only recently gotten back into Standard for this RCQ season and the upcoming PTQ in Chicago. But my experience so far has been, I've been playing a lot of the Esper deck that Jonathan brought. And I think while the deck is very good, it definitely struggles against other mid-range decks to some extent because those decks are just like, the Mosswood Dread Knights, the Sentinels, and just the larger, like the Planeswalkers, things like that have a tendency to go over the top of what Esper is doing, but in a way that's not as exploitable as the way that Domain goes over the top because you can't really bring in your Disdainful Strokes and things like that against them.
Okay, all right. So let's go ahead and look at the deck lists if we have them available until the players are ready to go. So Standard on tap. And like you're saying, for a lot of these players, I think Pioneer and Modern were probably, if they're regulars in the NRG Series, are the formats that were more relevant to them for the last few years. But Standard, I guess, for players worldwide now taking on renewed importance as the RCQ season does start this weekend. Raja Suleiman's Golgari mid-range. Lots of mid-range decks in this format. And I guess we'll go back to the deck list later as the players are ready to go. So if you were looking for Jonathan's deck list, you can find them. There's links all over the Nerd Rage website, and I'm sure they can get posted in the chat right now if someone's paying attention. But we are underway for format number 2.
And this does seem like the start that Esper would want to effectively get under the slightly larger mid-range deck by having that one drop. Hopefully he can follow it up and just curve all the way out.
Yeah, all right. No play early for Raja Suleiman.
Oh, but he's relying on a map token to get his land drop, maybe?
To get a second land drop? That's a little dicey, isn't it? That walks into a lot of precarious things. But yeah, Otawara being the first land is probably not a sign of a solid mana base for Jonathan Hobbs, in his hand at least. All right. Do we have a follow-up? Are we just trying to bait a removal spell on a bad creature? Maybe so, as there is a land for Jonathan Hobbs, so things are okay.
Yeah, if that's the case, because it looks like he had the tap land. That's a pretty good play then, because you do not want to be spending a go for the throat on with this prism or Preacher of the Schism.
Yeah, Preacher, such a cool card. I'll admit, the first time I was playing it this week, trying to get used to the format, I didn't realize you could get both triggers at the same time. Very well-designed, tricky card, as Raja follows up with the old heavy hitter Shieldred.
Yeah, Shieldred is has an interesting effect on the format. There's so many ways to kill her, like this go for the throat here, but she just is like a removal check, and if you don't have it, you just straight up die.
Right. And facing down things like Rafine that just want to cycle through a bunch of cards, Shield just kind of shuts that down. Raja here playing kind of the slower game here. We see a couple of creature lands among the mana base, just waiting to get on the board. And Liliana the Veil, okay. Nothing to eat right now, but go and go to work on the hand. Jonathan's ready to discard.
And that's a tough one. Not only is Liliana just like good against all the various threats that Esper has, but picking apart the hand is pretty devastating because Rafine really wants you to have a critical mass of cards in hand in order to be at full value. And she's really hard to get off the table with out of Esper. They don't really have a lot of Planeswalker removal.
Right. I mean, there are Tishana's Timebinders in Hobbs' sideboard, but those aren't coming into play yet, even though this is more or less the third game of the match. We are still in game 1 because we are just moved into Modern, and Liliana's going to crank away here. And I haven't seen a Liliana Veil Ultimate in quite some time, but we'll see. And okay, I was going to say maybe Raj is going to hold up defenses for a potential flash creature, but instead just coming across with the Cottage, I guess.
This is like an old school rock deck, just playing Liliana and attacking with Treetop Village.
And may very well be enough. Hobbs with 2 cards in hand after the Liliana activation, and if contemplating a removal spell on this Cottage, okay, that one works. That one works really well. Urtai can.
Oh, that's the perfect. Yeah, that's a perfect removal spell here.
Yeah,
he's tapped. Raj tapped out, so he can't make any use of the card that he drew from it, and now he gets to actually start pressuring this Liliana.
And Jonathan is going to come in with Rafine also. Okay, so achieve quite a bit here. Potentially hit Liliana for 4, and then it can't even eat a creature. This dramatically changed the course of this game in the last turn cycle.
This is a huge swing.
Wow.
Was that a Preacher you discarded?
It was a Preacher, and then the bat takes down Liliana, leaving Raja with just Takanuma. There is a Shieldred in the graveyard, but Raja's probably wondering what happened to my board here. I was looking okay. I had Liliana ticking up, and now I'm buried.
This is a fantastic showing of the strength of the Esper deck, and this shows like just how strong Rafine is. Urtai, perfect curve topper for the deck.
All right, so Raja does come back here with another Planeswalker. With mine's to make tokens, right, for Nissa?
Yeah, it's successively larger tokens each time it gets activated.
Right.
Unfortunately, these tokens don't have reach, despite being big and green.
Yeah, not ideal. Actually, I'm incorrect. It's plus to make tokens. So
yes,
4/4 in here.
Yeah, you'd think it might have secret reach, but
yeah,
for once it does not.
All right, so Jonathan with some real thought on how do I send my creatures here? Does Urkai attack at all? And if it does it receive the Rafine boost? Do I attack the Planeswalkers? This is a lot to think about here. Also tricky because you don't even know how much damage you're attacking for until you connive.
Yeah, I didn't see what Jonathan drew, but my instinct would be that you do offer the trade with that creature because you want to keep the board. Like, there's going to be a 5/5 next turn unless you deal some damage to the
Nissa.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And yet you're incentivized to send something at Liliana, even if it's just 1 damage to prevent the edict from happening. So
my instinct is you want to probably get at least a counter on the Rafine, because the bat's a kind of a removal magnet anyway, because there's a Liliana underneath it, and the Rafine has that mana tax, but it does somewhat defend. Oh yeah, cycling that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, indeed. Found a cut down, so that means the Rafine is guaranteed to be able to pitch something, and Jonathan will declare attacks here. We'll figure it out. Looks like Urtai and maybe Rafine also, so probably nothing going at Raja himself.
I can't imagine he attacks Raja at all
Yeah.
here.
And Raja's
okay,
like,
so
you know what?
The flyers are both going at... Oh, interesting.
Raja's like, clarify this for the viewers at home. What are you doing? And so if this is the attack, then Jonathan does not guarantee that Liliana won't be able to edict this turn.
Yeah, this is an interesting decision because now Raja can trade with the 4/3. The Nissa will die, but Liliana can edict away one of the creatures, and then I guess Jonathan has to sack the Rafine. Otherwise, Liliana under the bat makes him sack the Rafine anyway.
No, yeah, you'd definitely be right about that. Okay, so most of the board clears away, and that's unfortunate that for Jonathan Hobbs, the way that's going to work out. So I wonder, maybe, and with a land left over in hand. So this has been sweet here.
If this was his plan, I would have put the counters on the bat because you're going to be left with the bat anyway.
Right, I agree with you there. So Roger probably thinking the same. And if he draws a blank here, he may just be edict and send in with the other cottage, as there's no blocking. And yeah, there goes the Rafine. And Jonathan left the 1/1 lifelinker with flying and... Well, this game looked like it might be over both directions, and now we might be in for a while here.
This is what I love about Standard right now is games get so swingy like this. You know, a single top deck just completely changes the direction of the advantage bar.
Raja thinking about what to exile here. Takanuma being one irrelevant graveyard card that may be in Jonathan's deck, or maybe coming off the top. Let's see. Food is created, and so both players with some life gain as well. So no hurry to get this over with. All right.
Schooner, not a bad draw.
Not bad, not bad.
This is probably around the average draw that he could have had, honestly.
Yeah, but doesn't Jonathan owed an above average draw after the beating in the last match?
The problem with Magic is nobody's owed anything.
All right, Raja tapping some mana here. Has a play. All right.
Ooh, that's a nice one.
Yeah, it's pretty solid. The Schooner can trade with that on defense if Hobbs holds back the bat, which is, I mean, not exciting, but
Raja doesn't actually trade because it's a 3/4. And Gix does not have Death Touch despite looking very mean. Oh, wow. All right, here's an above average draw for you, Joe.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so here in Hobbs with his own Gix and sending in 2 creatures, finds a land from the Schooner, and Raja shakes his head and now has to figure out how do we get out of this mess. High left totals on both sides, so Gix able to draw plenty of cards with no real drawback at this point.
I love that Jonathan has 3 Gix in his deck. The card is just so good. It's like, in some situations, better than Rafine. Like, it's specifically this example, it's a place where it's better than Rafine.
Yeah, and more lands, and Raja's going to take his opportunity here to gain some life with his food because there's nothing else going on. And once again, facing down, he was able to dig his way out against a pretty intimidating board in the past, but seeing one again here. Okay, Gix is going to swing back, which makes sense.
Raja also in the awkward position where he needs one more land to activate Gix, but if he draws that land, he doesn't have any cards to discard to Gix. Gix's activation looks like flavor text, but I've had games decided by one of the players getting to activate it for 2 or 3.
Sure, we'll see if we can get to that as the Moss Knight for Raja. I don't remember the exact name of the card. It's something like that. Mosswood Dread Knight. All right, will find a replacement card and can enter the board, but this is not going to compare to the card advantage Jonathan's going to reach if this bat hits again with Gix in play.
This is
Raja's
where
face,
if I was Raja, I couldn't help but think about the siren that I spent a go for the throat on early in the game.
Yeah. It looked appealing at the time, which is kudos to Jonathan Hobbs for putting up a convincing display that he needed that map token to resolve, and was really just bluffing there. It could have cared less. And now the beatdowns continue here. Schooner Power Guy Gix and the bat coming in, and well, the Mosswood Dread Knight does do quite a bit of work making up for the card disadvantage of Jonathan's Gix hitting, as Raja can block each turn and pick up a card at the cost of, granted, 2/3 of his mana.
Yeah, it's not often these recursive threats get to block, but it's always fun when they do.
Something being clarified with the table judge here, but yeah, the block is going to happen. And Jonathan will pick up another card.
Looks like Jonathan has a Make Disappear as his only spell.
Yeah.
Ooh, here we go. Are we going to get the activation? Let's go!
Oh, we are. Okay. So 2 lands discarded, 2 cards off the top. Looks like Lateral Waste and Go for the Throat. Well, I mean, that's maybe less exciting than it could have been, but still very, very strong.
That's the thing, is even your lower tier hits are still, I mean, if you're discarding cards to Gix, they probably aren't very good, so you're just upgrading every single one.
All right, Raja, we've seen you dance out of some rough scenarios here.
Let's see what Raja's even trying to draw to. Gix's command would not even be that good, but it would. Oh wait, yeah, would he would be able to sack biggest creature and destroy all creatures' power 2 or less. That's probably his best draw at this point.
That would be good. Virtue Persistence would be something. He was able to hardcast it eventually and really pick up a long game advantage.
Oh, Shieldred's not terrible.
No,
Shieldred punishes the Gix draws because then now it takes 3 life.
Jonathan quickly draws there. There might have been another Gix that was drawn. I'm not sure, but here we go. Attack for 1. So somewhat negating the life loss from Shieldred by the bat having life link.
Yeah, and he's got some room to play with his life total.
Yeah, he's also got 2 cards in hand. Does Gix just spin it up again?
If he doesn't draw something good, then if he doesn't draw a removal spell for Shieldred, I would be pretty tempted to just spin the wheel with Gix. Imagine if you hit Virtue of Persistence.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Glissa and a bat.
See, those are still better than 2 redundant Gixes.
Absolutely.
This is exactly what I was talking about. You get to these points in Standard where you've been trading resources. Both players have a ton of mana, and you have a Gix in play. You just start dumping every card you draw to the Gix.
Yeah, and this becomes real problematic for Raja here with a land drop. And probably would have preferred that he had drawn the Glissa Sunslayer instead of Jonathan.
This game also goes to show the power of the bat in Standard. Like, this bat has just stayed on the battlefield for so long.
Right. I mean, it feels like it's so flimsy. It's not kind of really, probably it was thought it would interact. And yet it's the most played card in Standard based on something I saw this week. And, you kind of see why. It's easy to fit in every deck. It's a nuisance. It has lifelink. I mean, honestly, this bat could be a 3/3, as we talked about several turns ago. And if it was, this would be even more out of hand, but still doing work even as it is.
Yeah, the fact that it has lifelink is just such a big game for making the body relevant. Whereas a card like Freebooter, which obviously, Freebooter only hits non-creature spells, but it's just like night and day how much better Bat is than Freebooter.
All right. Raja. Oh, yeah. Cottage just going to chump the Glissa. That is not exciting.
Yeah.
And then pile
This is so good. First strike, death touch. What a combo!
I know. And I mean, a 1/1 with those abilities is strong. And here's Glissa with a 3 with.
You need 4 blockers.
Yeah.
That all have 3 power in order to kill Glissa.
And that's not exactly a welcome trade either.
No.
All right. I mean, this is just kind of. I mean, Jonathan's just having a ball here. I mean, picks up a card, can just, pitch his hand to Gix again. Yeah, sure. Why not?
It's remarkable seeing the difference in body language based from last match.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan up in his seat, little smile on his face as he discards more cards to Gix.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally people talk about who's having the fun in Magic. Is fun equivalent? Is it no? Jonathan's having all the fun right now, and that's saying something. So Raja has a Shielded in play. Shielded's a cool card, drain your opponent over time, but it's just nearly me. Yep, and there it is. Okay, Jonathan picks up game 1. So first mark in the win column for Jonathan Hobbs in this semifinals. But as Raja picks up one of the Jonathan cards by accident there at the end. All right, we'll go ahead and bring up the deck. Let's get a full look at what's going on. If you want to look ahead at home or look ahead what potentially would be upcoming in the third format, you can find all the deck lists at the Nerd Rage website. In the meantime, here is Golgari mid-range from Raja Suleiman. Smattering of removal, some value creatures, some planeswalkers, and it all amounted to getting beat down pretty hard in that game.
Yeah, very, very swingy game. That Gix top deck draw from Jonathan was just absolutely brutal. Exactly the kind of card you want to draw in that case. I really like the Aquazots in both player sideboards, actually. That card is just impossible to get rid of.
And pronounce, yeah.
And yeah, I think I got it right this time, but I have pronounced it incorrectly probably every time I've tried to pronounce it before this.
Well, that's brave. I haven't even tried. It's just the 5-drop that has the backside. All right, so you can see the sideboard there for Raja Suleiman. Let's go ahead and look at Jonathan Hobbs' Esper mid-range as the players are looking at each other's deck lists at the same time. Again, a mid-range deck. We've seen it before. It's got a lot of flash threats. It's got a lot of card advantage. I think the version that I watched play yesterday did not have the Spyglass Siren in it, so there are some differences in the lists. And we did see it play its role.
Yeah,
in this
I like
game.
the Spyglass Sirens with the schooners.
Yeah.
Post board, I imagine you also want your Aquazots, probably your Destroy Evils, as additional answers to the Shieldreds of the world. And your Tidebinders seem like the best answer to the Planeswalkers.
Sure, yeah, Tidebinder can do a lot here, and it's maybe not super common that a lot of creature bodies, they aren't going to trigger, but Shieldred is always going to trigger every single turn. So Tidebinder does have the opportunity to hit that as well. We could easily see those. Just having another flash threat is nice. Like you said, the Planeswalkers. I mean, there's a lot going on here, a lot of capabilities, and these mid-range decks, they have a lot of options, and probably Raja, looking at Jonathan Hobbs' deck list right now, just as we are, may not be able to accurately determine exactly what Jonathan's going to be doing here. Which is nice because in a lot
one of the big questions I have.
Go ahead.
Oh, one of the big questions I have when I'm playing these mid-range mirrors is how many copies of Cut Down you want in your deck post board on either side, because they have some great targets. Rafine's one of the better targets. Fairy Mastermind. I imagine these Deep Cavern Bats are likely coming out for Jonathan, but I'm not 100% sure about that. They do seem somewhat fragile.
Yeah, and that goes to what I was saying. And Raja probably doesn't know 100% what's going to happen either, which is always nice. I'm always comforted when sideboarding knowing if my opponent doesn't know exactly what to do against me. That generally just increases your chance of winning just by the littlest bit. And even though these players are both very experienced, put in lots of miles in all the formats of Magic over the last several years. This is still, I mean, Standard is relatively new ground for a lot of these players.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it's interesting with the 3-year rotation. If they've played Standard, like for instance for last year's RC, a lot of the cards are roughly the same.
Mm-hmm. No, they are. So
but
okay,
so this LCR is very powerful.
Yeah. So if we have a little bit more time to kill, they're still looking at each other's deck lists. If you're moving into a new format, like Standard right now, which I don't know how much experience you have with Standard before the last few months. I didn't personally have much. Is there, if whatever new form, is there a type of deck that you like to experiment with when you're moving to a new format? Do you want to be playing control deck, a mid-range deck, an aggro deck? Is there something that you feel like you learn about the format faster or more efficiently playing with? Or do you just kind of try and play you just play a few games with kind of everything and see where it falls?
Yeah, I think the like sort of conventional wisdom would be that mid-range deck is the best way to experience a format fresh. My general approach is to find cards that I that like are strong in other formats and gravitate toward those and see how they like line up in the context of the other format. Especially if we're going like down in formats, like from Modern down to Pioneer or Pioneer down to Standard.
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's generally my first instinct.
Right. So what you're saying is basically if a card seems playable in Modern, then in Standard it's probably pretty good. That's what we're saying there. Yeah.
Yeah. Generally speaking, as long as it doesn't rely on fetch lands.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. Yeah. So and then we see that here. I mean, Tidebinder playable in Modern. Sort of, potentially, useful in Standard. Shieldred, playable in Modern, potentially good in Standard. So yeah, no, that's a decent metric to at least keep in mind as you're examining a new format. Players have finally finished consulting. I mean, they've had a while to think about this. Why are we waiting for them to re-examine? I mean, I know you're going to do that. You're sitting down. You were here last year. What was your mindset?
I was indeed playing against one of these players in the finals.
What was the mindset? Like, were you? Well, we'll get to that later. We'll play out this game, and then we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. As game 2 underway, a flurry of land drops, no plays as of yet. Jonathan, once again, not an ideal land on turn 1. And
it always feels bad when you have to lead on a pain land. Although he may have done that in order to hold up a cut down or something like that.
Sure.
For a 2-drop.
Raja does have Liliana the Veil in hand, and I think several go for the throat, so lots of removal, and doesn't want to commit Liliana maybe into a flash threat, which is what Jonathan has. It's very Mastermind enters play. And we can see Gix and cut down.
One of the questions.
The
perennial question on turn 3 is: do you lead on Gix or Rafine if you have access to both? And I generally lean Rafine early in the game because you need a critical mass of cards in your hand. Although Gix does help you get those cards, so I'm not precisely sure what the right answer is there.
Okay, well, Jonathan does go with Gix here, and Raja, with removal in hand, do you go after Gix or Fairy Mastermind? The answer is Fairy Mastermind. If there's a follow-up Liliana that makes sense, this is just no reason to take a hit if you don't need to, and it is going to be the play. So stable board at the moment, but as we saw last game, things can change rather dramatically multiple times within a game.
Yeah, we'll see how long this Liliana is given the opportunity to work. If Jonathan has another one of those Ties, that's going to be pretty powerful here.
Yeah, it certainly would be. Jonathan thinking things through. How does he want to proceed with this turn? And frustratingly for the opposition, I mean, if your opponent passes here, there's no guarantee that it's not, it could be a counter, it could be a creature, it could just be removal, it could be, you can't tell what the Esper Range deck is holding just by them passing the turn with no action.
Yeah, I saw, I think, what looked like a Fairy Mastermind in Jonathan's hand, which is the perfect answer to a shield or to a Liliana on 2 loyalty. The nightmare would be if he has Make Disappear plus Fairy Mastermind, and Raja goes for something like a Shieldred, that would be a real swing.
It definitely would, and Raja probably aware of that and ask how many cards in hand. Do you start taking up Liliana now? Do you? No, we're gonna commit to the board. Okay, Mosswood to draw.
Mosswood Dread Knight's such a cool card.
It is. It is well designed. It looks overpowering, but I don't actually think it is. It's just solid, right? It's just it's fair, right? Even though it's got a lot going on.
Yeah, I totally agree.
All right. Liliana does activate. Both players pitch a card. Jonathan pitches cut down a land for Raja, and now it's Fairy Mastermind. And Raja can remove it if there's no counter magic from Jonathan waiting. So Raja has cut down and go for the throat. So he's either choosing rule spell or choosing whether he wants to let Jonathan untap first, and that's what it is. So willing to give up potentially into a stronger a more expensive counter, as opposed to kind of inflicting Jonathan's mana development for the turn.
Yeah, it's a tough call. I think there's a punish regardless of which one you choose, but I think being more mana efficient makes sense since you're bad against Make Disappear in this spot anyway.
Sure. And all right, Raja has left the table. Did leave his phone. Courteous man indeed. And I don't know if this is a mid-game. Okay, this is Raja decided he needed to go to the bathroom and wasn't interested in waiting until the end of the game, the end of the match. So okay.
Yeah, you get to take a free bathroom break whenever you want. So it's actually optimal to use that.
Might as well.
You want to get your full value out of your experience.
So now that we have a moment, do you want to speak to your experience playing at the end of the tournament last year and how that felt, either emotionally or just kind of strategically, or just any thoughts that you that stand out to you?
Absolutely. I have a pretty vivid memory of this experience. First of all, playing in one of these tournaments where you get, it's sort of a test of endurance more than anything else. You play so much Magic. It was just such a fun time, and very happy for these players so they get to experience it. Playing specifically against Raja in the finals, we played a grueling set of 3 matches, and I just remember feeling like it was just dead silent in the room, and we were thinking, each one of us thinking so carefully about every single play we were making, and just nodding, and every once in a while, me or him would break the tension with a joke that hit extra hard because everybody was so laser focused. It was. Raja is one of those players where he does not rush into any decision. He really takes his time and sort of considers the ramifications of every play he could make, which leads to a very intimidating experience when you're playing against him. So you kind of have to slip into that exact same mindset.
That makes sense. It is stressful, and it is. I mean, that's the idea. We want to put the players to the test. We want to see who can. The idea is not to see who is the victor on stamina, but that does play a role. And I know we interviewed Theo Zhang at the end of the day yesterday, and he was one of the players that had to play all day long. And he was exhausted. He was tired, worn out. And yet you come back for day 2 and you just have to keep slogging through. And is there something else you'd rather be doing right now? These are competitive Magic players. They want to be here, even if it's grueling.
Absolutely.
And Raja is back, so we'll return to the table.
I do also remember taking the occasional bathroom break just to recenter myself, because you're so locked in. You need a sense to just release the tension for a second.
All right. Well, we'll see if we get a chance to ask him that if we interview him later on today. Did you actually have to go to the bathroom,
or did you just need a break?
Yeah.
He just took a 30-second nap in the bathroom.
All right. So Gix from Jonathan Hobbs here into the Liliana potential edict. So Raja may be wondering, do you have a flash creature? Is this a trick, or you just not have anything else and you're just going to use it to try and kill the Liliana? And Raja is going to go up.
This does imply he has a way to deal with this Gix somehow. He does have the blocker, but oh wow, Lockthwain scoring such a great answer for this. Although it should be in the adventure zone.
I'm sure someone will notice that soon, I would imagine. And if, I mean, we have, okay, maybe I spoke too soon.
I don't think that's a thing you can miss.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can get the virtue in the right zone. He's happy to put the Mosswood in the right zone.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he just thinks he'll never get to 7 mana, so it doesn't matter.
Huh. Well,
but this is exactly the kind of game that Golgari deck wants to play. I know the Gix's Command bought a couple creatures back, but I'm not even sure how that card is all that good in the matchup. It really only has 2 modes, which is sack your largest creature and bring back a bunch of stuff. You're not really ever wrathing the board. Still in the wrong zone for the virtue. Let's see.
Well, we didn't miss that being discarded low on the Veil, right? That did kill the Gix.
I'm fairly certain.
Yeah. Okay. Well, production should be overhearing us right now, so they'll, if we're wrong, then we're wrong, and we'll continue on with the game, and we'll see if it gets caught eventually. Either way, Mosswood coming across here. Glissa joins it. Liliana on the board, and Jonathan.
This is textbook Golgari.
Yeah.
Oh no, the game ended in the wrong board state.
Well, I don't think Raj is too concerned about it right now, as he does even up the match. And Jonathan Hobbs here, playing for his tournament life, needs to pick up this game, as Raja already up a format, and now evens things up in standard. And if Jonathan does win this game, then match 3 will be Pioneer, as that is what's remaining. But that's a long ways off at this point. This is tough stuff. I know I have played a few of these events myself, not the Star City branded versions, and yeah, I agree with everything Jesse said. And it's kind of as you complete matches, it's more of a relief instead of it's not something you're celebrating. It's something like, oh, okay, we're still in it. We're still going. It's just you're trying to achieve as much as you can. And Raj has been here before, been this deep in the event. And so he knows what's up, the defending champion. I mean, that's winning 2 of these in a row. Yeah, that would be something. That would be really impressive. Matt Hoey on the other side of the bracket versus Steven Dykman. Matt Hoey has also been here multiple times before the NRG Championship. At some point, maybe we can get an update on how those players are faring, progressing through the match. And if this one does complete first, we will pick up however much is remaining in the other match. In the meantime, let's hit you with the schedule again for the first half of the year. If you want to attempt to join us here next year at the NRG Championship, or just come out and spend a weekend, play some side events, compete in whatever format you like, you can see the first half of the year, the announced schedule, February 17th, 18th in Chicagoland. Significant because it is a week before the Pro Tour. So if you are playing in the Pro Tour, you want to come out a week early and test your mettle in the 10K Pioneer on Saturday. There's also 5K Standard on Sunday. Then in later in April in Minneapolis, 10K Modern Showdown, 5K Legacy Trial. May 11th and 12th in Indianapolis. Showdowns both days. So both events auto-qualifying players for the championship. And then June in St. Louis, 10K Pioneer, 5K Modern. I want to mention, and I did not bring this up yesterday, start times for all NRG events this year are changing. We're starting at 9 o'clock now. So if you were just marking your calendar, but not your actual alarm clock based on experience the last 2 years, you might want to change things. However, that was noted by the judge staff that there may be a fair amount of leniency on tardiness penalties on the first event of the year, because some of you will not listen.
I'm so glad you said that, because I did not know that, and I would absolutely have shown up in round 2.
There was a thought that was likely to happen. All right, not you specifically, just people in general.
Yeah.
Okay, so Matthew Hoey and Steven Dykman are playing Pioneer first, and they are 1-1 in their first match. We did stagger the matches a little bit, so there is more likely to be some overlap. So we can bring you some of the other semifinal if this one doesn't last too long. We know Raja tends to take his time in some of his matches, especially the ones where he's playing blue-white. So we'll see whether that happens or not.
Yeah. Something to keep in mind if you're planning to come to the Chicago Pro Tour PTQ, the standard one, this standard showdown on Sunday, the week before, is the perfect opportunity to run your deck through the ringer. I know anytime I play a tournament, I always leave the tournament being like, wow, my deck would be so much better if I got to do a do-over. And you kind of get that with the way that things work out this time around.
Yeah, there you can see it with the different art style than we've had in the past. But the Chicagoland event.
This looks sick, by the way.
Yeah, it does. And also, I'll mention, I don't know the name of the new venue, but the Chicago events are no longer going to be in Mundelein. So that is another thing to look into. Don't just mark your calendar. You might not only might you show up a half hour late, you might be in the wrong city.
I'm going to show up to the DoubleTree at in round 2 with a deck I hadn't even sleeved yet.
And honestly, there's probably be enough people there to draft with.
That's true. At least there's that consolation prize.
All right. So, good times coming this year. New Rage owner Norman Cohen happy with how things have gone recently. Going to run it back for another year. So 2024 season in full effect as we shuffle up for Game 3 here. Raja Suleiman. And now Jonathan, can we coordinate these things a little bit better? Jonathan Hobbs now in the restroom.
Yeah.
Normally,
it is actually optimal to go to the restroom first. You do not want to be the second person to go to the restroom.
High-level insight from Jesse Robkin. Explain why.
Mostly the smell.
Okay. Fair enough. I was hoping for some kind of strategic insight, and you gave me with that. But okay, all right.
I think it's some high-level strategy, but that's fine.
All right, Hobbs sitting down, and actually in the background of Raj's player cam, I just saw Matthew Hoey walking by. So maybe the players are just taking turns. All the semifinalists taking turns in the restroom, one by one. All right, Raja shuffling up. Jonathan's already presented. Can he run it back? Can he win again? The other match, Stephen Dykeman has just won the Pioneer match against Matthew Hoey. So they were 1-1. It is now one match in favor of Stephen Dykeman. Those players completed Pioneer, so they've got Modern and Standard left. Here, we're in the middle of Standard with with Pioneer left over if Jonathan Hobbs is able to take down this next game.
And if if Jonathan does take down this game, we'll see, I believe, the same matchup that Dykeman and Hoey just had on the other side of the Blue-White Yorion versus Rakdos. Is that right, man?
That's I don't have the other.
Yes, that is. Yeah.
Okay.
Which, if I were Jonathan Hobbs, I'd be feeling pretty good about my chances if I can get to that point. Although you don't want to get ahead of yourself, you got to make sure you can win this game first.
Mm-hmm. Out of the 3 formats, did any of the meta games surprise you more than the other? I know for the Modern seemed more stock, I would say, than the other 2 formats.
Modern just looked like just Modern as you know, 2 or 3 Murktide, 2 or 3 of every other deck. Standard also made a lot of sense, like a lot of Domain, a lot of Esper, and then a smattering of other people with meta calls. So I think Pioneer definitely having, I believe, 6 Blue-White Yorion players.
Yeah, I was surprised.
The players are after my heart. Like I'm so chuffed to have seen that. I love Blue-White Yorion Pioneer, and I think it's legitimately kind of good right now. As evidenced by two copies in the top 4. I was surprised to see so little Amalia. I think that deck is still quite strong.
Yes.
Though, if I registered Amalia and saw 6 Blue-White players in the 16-player field, I would regret all of my life decisions that led me to that point.
I had to say, I was so surprised that our Amalia player cut a Wild Growth Walker, just de-emphasizing the combo aspect just by the smallest amount. But that was maybe that's become the new thing, but I was unaware of that, and that was surprising to me.
Yeah, honestly, I don't hate that idea. When I was first picking up Amalia, that was the first thing I considered doing, because the problem with Wild Growth Walker is it doesn't do anything when you're not comboing. Like,
Sure.
Send Out Scout's not very good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. The players, this is the way they look when they're waiting for us. So if somehow that's the case, go ahead and give them the go ahead, because we're ready to go. They both appear to have, maybe they're waiting for the table judge. It's unclear for the moment, but yes, we've had bathroom breaks. We've had all kinds of acceptable excuses, but now so now we are in fact waiting for the table judge now. All right, everyone taking their turn, slowing down the progression of this match. That's okay. We've got all day. These rounds are untimed. We are, I guess we're going to come back to the booth for a moment. So if I don't have chat up, this is the moment. This is the time I could use the inspiration of chat. What do you want to hear about? I don't have it open, so we'll just free will. Jesse Robkin played through the year.
Bust out my freestyle rap.
Right. Well, you know what? We're good timing. The game is already back in progress. Let's go back down to the table to save us all from whatever that may have sounded like. I mean, I know the screenwriters, the poets, they probably have interesting lyrics. Presentation might be up in the air, but we'll save you all at home from experiencing that. All right, Schooner on the board here for Jonathan to open things up in game 3. And there's no potential play for Raj at the end of Jonathan's turn, so we must be contemplating a land drop here. Two swamps and a pilfer, I believe.
Oh, wow.
All right,
Pilfer is a lot like Bat, except it's a little different.
Yeah. Same mana cost. You still get to look at your opponent's hand. Choose a non-land card. Well, Jonathan presents a pair of doubles and a Gix. So Raja knows his hand. Well, actually, is the dual land for Jonathan?
Third land drop here.
Yeah, no third land drop. And is that third land drop?
No black source.
Yeah, no black source. Okay, that's what I was thinking. So do you then?
I did think that island was a swamp until.
So does Raja make disappear? He does. And this is kind of the situation Raja put himself in a couple times during the modern portion of this match, just needing to draw a land off the top. Did, and so does Jonathan. So not to be outdone. And now we'll take a look at what Raja's got to work with. And we see a Llanowar Wastes, Mosswood Dread Knight, Shieldred, Liliana Go for the Throat, and a Sentinel. So Jonathan with lots of options here. I mean, the bats generally would like to take removal to protect themselves, but if Jonathan wants to do that, what you take Go for the Throat and then pass on your attack so you can sack the Schooner to Liliana? That's something, I guess. Otherwise, you could take. Okay, you just take Liliana. Now he's going to attack, and then just Raja can still do the same thing, but it's going to take a while. And Jonathan picks up the 4th land off of the attack, so it's a big deal. You actually saw a little bit of a fist pump there.
Yeah, that Gix is coming.
All right, so Raja with just a Llanowar Waste and a pass here. If you are enjoying the coverage and you are interested in seeing us again for the next year's events, all of them will be broadcast here on Twitch. So remember to follow both on social media and here and receive notifications when we go live. As Jonathan drops a second bat into play, we'll take another look at Raja's hand.
Good, because I didn't get to catch every single card last time. So this is exactly what I needed. Thank you, Jonathan.
Maybe Jonathan didn't write them down either. And he was like, oh.
Yeah. He's like, let's take another look.
I was going to play Gix, but I forgot your hand. So let me see it again.
I do like this sequencing because you get to hold up that second make disappear.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, drawing that fourth land was beneficial for sure. And Raja's got to figure out how to navigate the known cards in Jonathan's hand, which do include Make Disappear and Gix. All right. Take down the bat. Jonathan Cruz in response.
All right. Well.
And the fresh card is Anoint the Affliction. So
it's now Raja's turn to have the mana issues.
Mm-hmm.
And that second Make Disappear face up, which a lot of the time is kind of a death sentence for the card because your opponent can play around it. But Raja can't really afford to do so here. So it's honestly, so now his goal is to find a way to get it out of Jonathan's hand without spending too powerful of a card to do so.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Fairy Mastermind, extra card drawn for Jonathan. And this could snowball pretty quickly here as Jonathan is picking up cards. If he finds another land, then he could actually protect Gix with the counter, which with multiple would be 3 attackers on the board. That really could get things out of hand very quickly here. John, there's the land.
Yep.
And Raja's smiling, giggling almost like, oh boy, you drew 2 lands in a row, but I didn't. And this might be curtains already.
Yeah. This is exactly the way that you win these games with Esper is you just get your cheap threats into play and then hold up those Make Disappears and make life miserable for your opponent.
Yeah, Jonathan empty-handed during Declare Attackers, and now with 4 cards in hand. And at the cost of 3 life, not too bad of a deal. Actually, 2 life, even. The bat will give 1 back, and Jonathan just drew more cards than Raja has permanents.
Life-linking flyer that steals a card out of your opponent's hand and then draws you a card for the cost of a life, that's a Splinter Stone situation.
It seems like that should be a gold card at least, right? That doesn't sound like just a black card.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Raja Suleiman, what do we think? We're going to see another format, or are you going to somehow come back here? Some judge consultation there, but I think we're okay. All right, talking over Shieldred. That's
classic
something.
Flip Shieldred onto the table and hope it's good enough.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be, but we'll see. We'll see. Shieldred is very powerful.
A mere 5 cards in Jonathan's hand.
All right. Well, maybe Jonathan will just, trigger Rafine a whole bunch of times here. And this is quite a bit of life loss, but I guess Raja's not overly concerned about it. Johnson's not overly concerned about it.
It's probably lethal.
It's just lethal. Yeah. Okay. So Jonathan wins the standard portion of the match, and we will play on.
So now we get to play a matchup I played an absolute bleep ton in Pioneer to prep for the regional championship because I played a lot of Blue-White Yorion versus Rakdos, and it is a very fun matchup. So we're in for a real treat here.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and look at the Pioneer metagame, as that's what's remaining to us in this match. And you can see that the odds that it would be Blue-White versus Rakdos was actually fairly high, given what the players brought to the event.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like normally these numbers, like Azorius would be where Phoenix is, Phoenix would be where Rakdos is, and Rakdos would be where Azorius is. But those 3 decks being the top of the field does make a lot of sense.
Right. And then here, unlike Modern and maybe even the Standard, we had some outliers in the Pioneer metagame. We did have a Lotus deck. We did have a Quintorius deck. And we had a Gruul Ramp deck. And I'm going to admit, a week ago, I hadn't even seen this Gruul Ramp deck. I didn't even know what it was. When it was submitted, what? No, that can't be. What is this? And yet it's put up a fight. And I believe it made it into day 2. So
it feels like the type of thing that must have been like a meta read or something like that. I can't imagine somebody is like a Gruul Ramp main. But this matchup, the playing Yorion does make the Azorius deck better off against Rakdos than other 60 card Azorius decks. And I've been a firm proponent of putting Yorion in your Azorius deck basically since Temporary Lockdown was printed, giving you just like another great blink target. But so having the 4/5 in the companion zone is certainly helps this matchup. However, I know some people think that this matchup is straight up favored for Azorius control. I don't believe that's the case. I think that Rakdos is still a slight favorite. The discard spells, the cheap pressure are all just such, and every threat is like pretty hard to deal with once they're on the board, or pretty punishing if they are, like Fable, Graveyard Trespasser, etc.
Right. Okay, so upcoming, we will have match 3 of the semifinals between Jonathan Hobbs and Raja Suleiman, Black-Red Midrange, and Blue-White Yorion. We're going to step away for a moment, and we'll come right back when the players are ready to get match 3 started. So this is the Nerd Rage 2023 Championship. Thanks for being here. Stick around. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. One match remaining in our semifinals between Raja and Jonathan. Jesse Robkin here with me to finish up the championship here. I got my deck list sorted out. It gets tricky. Some of these players submit black-red multiple formats, blue-white multiple formats, so I'm kind of straightening out which ones are the Pioneer lists and which are not. But Pioneer upcoming, you said you practiced a lot of this matchup and just a lot of this format. Is there any sort of would you say, like, for example, here, going first in this matchup, more or less relevant than, say, the average game that we're going to see?
I would say, well, Pioneer tends to be one of the more punishing formats for, like, going first versus second. But it's especially true with Azorius, with a bunch of random tap lands. You know, you don't really have any true 1-drops. Your removal spells require you to, like, spend extra mana or pitch cards. So definitely, Rakdos is pretty happy to be on the play with this one.
Yeah, I'm sure Jonathan is happy with that. I mean, did lose on the play already once in this semifinal. I mean, maybe he takes a draw. He's like, no, this isn't working for me. I gotta go second.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think he got to this point by choosing to go second.
What do I get? What do I get? Chat. Do I get like extra Do we get extra subscriptions if Jonathan goes second here? I mean, come on. I mean, it's not really a fair wager because you don't get anything if he goes first. So maybe we can scratch that. But yeah, we have going first is good when you have 1-drops, when you have thoughts, when you can have discard spells before your opponent can interact. And Jonathan does have the 5th discard spell on the main deck, the Duress, alongside the set of Thoughtseize. We saw Steven Dykman, who's also actually still in the running for this event. He had 7 discard spells in his main deck in Pioneer. Jonathan with a more typical 5, but still, I mean, that's your best? I mean, is there anything you want more in your opening hand than a discard spell at this point?
I would say Inti is a huge player in this matchup. That card just gets out of hand so quickly, and allows you to just avoid overcommitting into a sweeper because it's a card advantage engine, it's damage output. So I would say Inti and Reckoner Bankbuster are the two drops that I would really be keeping an eye on. And as blue-white, if my opponent doesn't play a 2-drop on turn 2, I feel way better about my chances of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so here's the Thoughtseize. Both players on 6 cards. We saw them each bottom 1. The reveal for Raja, we see Demolition Field, only 1 other land, it looks like. No, I'm sorry, there's 2 there. Wandering Emperor, Dovin Zito, and Memory Deluge. So a little slow, maybe, but some interactive tools here.
It depends on what Jonathan's hand has, but I would snap off the Memory Deluge here. I'm pretty happy as Rakdos trading 1-for-1 with the random stuff, but it looks like he took the March. So egg on my face. Seems like some 2-drop seems pretty important for him.
Well, good covering for me because I didn't even correctly identify the card, but Reckoner Bankbuster is the follow-up here for Jonathan. doesn't necessarily indicate playing. I like how Bankbuster can either just be a beater or it can be a card advantage engine. So you don't really know how he's going to pace the game just on that being the play. Well, now we do.
Yeah. Bankbuster is it's just so powerful. Oh yeah, missing a land drop. So that makes sense why he would have opted to protect his Bankbuster from the march.
Sure. All right. So Raja drew Omen of the Sea, does cast it to get things rolling on his side. And yeah, Jonathan down a land drop once again. And Raja will figure out how he wants to pace this, how he wants to make this happen. We know he's got Memory Deluge, so I mean, there's at least one more land in hand. So really in no trouble of making it through into the mid-game and the developmental portion of the game. Jonathan, not quite there yet.
Something about the blue-white deck that I have noticed is rather than having like a specific like draw that punishes like most decks in Pioneer have a nut draw that like just punishes their opponent sort of regardless of the matchup. Blue-white's nut draw is their opponent stumbling in any way. That's the way that blue-white is all of a sudden you're leaning forward in your chair, you're feeling better about your chances.
All right, well then Raja must be feeling good here. And for Jonathan, I mean, you missed a land drop. Okay, you missed one land drop. That's not the end of the world, right? I mean, I'm sure you're not thrilled on turn 3 having to pass, but here you're kind of reinvigorated. You're okay.
Totally agree.
And Jonathan will figure out the play here. So, I mean, drawing at it now. Okay, I was gonna say drawing her with Bankbuster now doesn't seem great. NT comes down. You're vulnerable to lockdown, obviously, but that's probably just something you live with, right?
Yeah. Inti and Bankbuster, not nearly as much of a combo as Inti and Smuggler's Copter. So
Yeah.
Inti is still a powerful card in its own right.
All right, so March does wipe out the Bankbuster. Raja leaves Jonathan the creature in play, and is this NT going to get to attack? It does appear that that's the case. All right, Raja is willing to let this come in here, and Jonathan with a maybe the best discard. Is that Croxa in hand?
It looks like it might be.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Yep. And Raja with the punishing blue-white mana base, tap land on turn 4 means he can't even end of turn Memory Deluge here.
Yeah, absolutely. Demolition Field activation against Jonathan's deck, not something to be too excited about, but Fable the Mirror Breaker off of the ante is tremendous. Swapping that out for the Croxa, Jonathan's got to be happy about that, whether it resolves or not, and that's up to Raja right now. But, I mean, we know Dovin's Veto in hand. I guess, is it the option, Dovin's Veto or Demolition Field, to clean up your mana?
I have a hard time imagining what would be better than Dovin's vetoing here, and it looks like Raja agrees.
Yeah, gets out of his hand, finds. I mean, there's not too many better targets, are there, in John's deck anyway, for the veto to hit.
Yeah, one of the better targets is in exile already with the Bankbuster.
All right, a third tap land for Raj, but now with 4 untapped, does turn on the majority of his deck. And Jonathan is going to come in again here.
And here's the classic squeeze for playing against blue-white. They're on 4 mana. That they have Memory Deluge in hand, but do they also have Wandering Emperor? You have to decide whether or not to attack into it.
Yeah, and you kind of, I mean, you're probably not passing up too many attacks with that, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. It is frustrating when you have to do that, and it is shielded. As Jonathan slowly builds up the graveyard for Croxa, not there yet. And Raja, all right. Is it going to be Memory Deluge? Is it going to be another counter? Is it going to be, it's not going to be Wandering Emperor at this point.
Certainly not.
And you're right. I mean, Raja really does contemplate all his plays. He does not rush. And we're untimed rounds, there's no reason to.
If this were me, I would have just snapped off the Memory Deluge looking for a Wrath. And that shows why Raja is the methodical player that he is.
I'd be curious to see it. Well, I don't have sight of the rest of Raja's hand now, but I'm curious what else he has that is requiring this much thought. I mean, he's not going to Demolition Field to Hive the Eye Tyrant here. I wouldn't imagine. So it's Memory Deluge or something.
The only reason to do that would be if he had a 2-mana counter for this Shield Ridden hand.
Mm.
But so that was what he was tanking on, was whether or not to hit the Demolition. Oh, but the issue is if it's Censor, he can't Demolition Field first because then he has the mana to pay for it.
Right. Good call. Okay, so that does make sense. That all was probably what Raja was thinking about. And passes the turn here with Shielded off the board. Memory Deluge still in hand. But this Inti cranking away here. Ooh.
And this game is exactly what I'm talking about when I say Inti is one of the most important cards in the matchup. The amount of card advantage it's generated, the pressure it's generated, just steadily getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah,
it's duress to clear the way.
Raja looking at Jonathan's graveyard here, wanting to know how many cards are in it. Can the Croaks come back this turn? The answer is yes. So Raja even as the option here, does he potentially, if he some more expensive interaction here, you would still be able to just discard the Memory Deluge to the Croaksa and then flash it back in the future if he draws a land, but then he's in rough shape on the board. So he's gonna looks like play in response here, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, if he had 7 lands, I would have been tempted to just let the Memory Deluge go to the graveyard, end of turn, cast a 7-mana Dig Through Time. But in this case, he's on the back foot, and he desperately needs to find an answer both to the Inti on the board and the Croaksa that will soon be on the board. Temporary Lockdown could be a good one, but if he hits it here, it gets duress out of the hand. So difficult spot.
All right, more. Cycle Sensor. Okay. That's interesting. He's looking for okay. Sunfall is the choice. So he was a 2 land remaining. All right, no action for Raja, but Memory Deluge in the graveyard. Jonathan figuring out the rest of the turn. Croaksa waiting. Lots going on here. Things looking very good for Jonathan, as Raja's going to need a whole another turn just to flash back the Memory Deluge and get something going. Are you? I mean, we're just heavily favoring Jonathan at this point of this game, right?
Yeah. The way, let's see, does Raja have Farewell? He does not. Okay, so the way out of this would be a top decked Temporary Lockdown, like right now. And it might be worth cracking the Omen to find, because he is dead if he has nothing and Jonathan untaps. Okay,
he agrees with you. The Inti did not discard on attack this time around, as Jonathan knew he was spending his mana on the Croak, so just got in for 4. And Raja gonna think this over. It looks like Plains and maybe another March, but that's not good enough, I don't think.
If that's a March, then yeah, it's certainly not good enough. There's also the Hive of the Eye Tyrant still to come as well.
Right. All right, Raja will dump both cards and cross his fingers. Draw off the top is another land, and Jonathan Haas will pick up game 1 here in the 3rd format. Things look pretty. Yeah.
Sorry. Textbook example of Rakdos leveraging discard spells, cheap threats, just making life really difficult for the blue-white player, especially when Rakdos is on the play.
Yeah, and that Croaksa obviously came in big. That's a 1-of in the deck. But it's in the deck, so you can draw it, or in this case, discard it, and it did pay off big time for Hobbs. Let's go ahead and bring up the Pioneer deck lists and see what else the players have to work with. Raja Suleiman, the blue-white Yorion. So you said that you liked the Yorion versions more, and that's more so because of being able to fit in additional cards that are just all useful, or because you actually think the value of the Yorion itself is significant?
I think it's the having the companion in the companion zone basically is the big reason. It's not a very high downside. Most of the cards are all pretty good. And if you look at a classic 60 card blue-white deck, it's almost all 3-ofs. It's kind of deranged to me that they're not just playing the 4th card and then, slapping the companion in their companion zone. Omen of the Sea, also a huge gain for the 80 card version. The 60 card versions have no real way to smooth until they hit 3 lands and can start casting Quick Study. So Omen of the Sea is really important. So yeah, I think that definitely it's better to have the 4/5, but even then, it's still not like a great matchup. I would say it's maybe, if I were to assign a number, I would say like 53-54% in Rakdos' favor.
Okay, that's pretty exact.
Yeah,
but
roughly exactly 53%.
Okay. Based on a lot of experience, obviously, so we'll mark that off as being a fairly reliable estimate, and we'll go ahead and look at Jonathan Hobbs's black-red mid-range deck. Probably, fairly stock, and a few cards maybe that. Well, actually, I take that back. I mean, I don't know if we can say there is a stock black-red deck anymore now that the Smuggler's Copters are in some of the decks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his Jonathan's sideboard is pretty punishing for this matchup because of those 2 Liliana the Veils. That's going to be a real beating.
Yeah, Liliana and 4 more discard spells to really put the pressure on Raja's deck, and also just, I mean, Go Blank is such a nice card, and I mean, there isn't really much graveyard interaction in the blue-white deck, but there is Memory Delusion that can cripple kind of some of the late game ferocity of the deck if you do actually lose 1 or 2 Memory Delusions into exile.
Yeah, absolutely. There is some conversation I've heard. Some people don't like bringing in Go Blank in this matchup.
Okay.
I personally like it. But
all right. Well, what other people think matters less than what Jonathan Hobbs thinks, so we'll find out how he decides to play it. Certainly some easy cuts here. I don't imagine all this removal is necessary, but he will figure things out. And it's not really a matter of figuring things out. This is a matchup where these players know what they're doing coming into the table, coming into the weekend. I'm sure Jonathan and Raja both knew exactly how they're going to sideboard in this matchup.
Yeah. If I had to guess, I would say probably a couple of these fatal pushes come out, maybe all 4. The Torch the Tower. And then it's kind of all, I guess the Power would kill some number of those. Because there's 6 cards you definitely want to bring in.
So, okay, let me ask you this, more of just a general question. How often in a tournament match do you sit down for whatever round and then you are figuring out your sideboarding on the fly? You don't already basically know what your plan was going in. How often would you say that happens? 10% of the time, less than that? I mean, I'm sure it's not a big number, but
I would say I almost always think through the sideboarding, even if I end up sticking with my plan, just because sometimes things change if my opponent has like a weird card that I didn't really expect them to have, or if they played the matchup differently than I intended or expected them to play it. So I would say it's I probably stick with my normal sideboarding upwards of around 80% of the time, and then but like more than half the time I'm like actively not second guessing, but like double checking my work basically, to see if I still want to go the same way that I normally do.
Yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable. All right, so let's see. Game 1, both players are on 6 cards. Raja comfortable with what he's got here. Jonathan going to throw his back. So yeah, I mean, that sounds about right to me. And as far as following your pre-approved plan, and you do you go ahead and plug yourself. You do have you still run your Patreon where you are putting out, if people want to find that, if they want to have your advice on what the tech is, where do they find that from you?
Yeah, I do still have my Patreon, and I patreon.com/tittypills if you want to see my sideboard guide and my thoughts on various formats when they crop up.
Well, I'm sure people do. I mean, you have established yourself in the region, and not just in the region. I mean, I'm sure people everywhere know who you are at this point and have followed your exploits and know what's going on and are interested in your thoughts on variety of formats and decks. As we're underway here, Raja with a convenient plains indicator or I guess white mana indicator for his land there. And same start as last time for Jonathan. And that's a lot of land. Ooh. Raja Suleiman, 5-line hand here. Quick Study and Wandering Emperor. The choice is kind of probably going to reflect Jonathan's hand, but even though he's down a card, this isn't. He's probably not too unhappy to see that kind of assortment of cards.
Yeah, the notable NRG Champs competitor Dan Weiser says he keeps every single hand in this matchup basically, and just every single hand with blue-white. So this is a classic. There are 7 cards in my hand, and I'm going to keep situation from Raja.
Well, I can respect that. I have certainly had attitudes like that in the past. And here is the field on turn 2 to deny Jonathan a dual end here. Jonathan with a smile on his face. We'll see. I mean, I would say this probably very rarely would the black red deck actually run into mana troubles because of something like this, but you never know. How many basics?
Yeah, the only thing that could happen is getting Field of Ruin off of red mana. That's the main thing that would likely happen.
Yeah.
But with so many red sources, it's pretty unlikely.
All right, we'll see it. There are 2 swamps in Jonathan's deck, so even if he draws a second one, you're probably not heavily interested in throwing it into play. And here is that looks like a Mutavault to me. So okay, you called that. Maybe Jonathan is actually a little stuck on colored mana here, and all of a sudden Raja has found himself an advantage.
Yeah, I would always wait until land drop 3 to see if they're color screwed, because they might just have the slow land. But Raja with 6 Field of Ruin effects in his deck, we actually might start seeing some strip mining happening, especially with this Sunken Citadel powering those out for effectively just 1 mana.
All right, Void Shatter takes out the first Fable, and the second one looks like it's going to resolve, but the Quick Study will reload Raja's hand. And I mean, already seeing some merit to what you're saying, the idea of just keeping basically anything, as your deck will just function, and as long as you have some mana sources, it will come together. And we're seeing that already.
Question is Void Shatter the Bant Charm of Pioneer?
Okay. I don't in the sense that it's versatile, or in the sense that one random card that Raja has in his deck for seemingly no reason. I suppose it's useful enough. I mean, it would be nice against the front half of the Kroxa, but there's a cost to playing that, right? I mean, we're giving up a Zorb, right? That's something real. All right. Well, if we get Raja,
I'm personally of the opinion that there should be no 3-mana counters in blue-white. But
okay,
if you're gonna play any, Void Shatter is the funniest one to play.
I will. Maybe that factored into Raja's deck building choices. What is going to get a laugh the most out of the viewers, out of the people at home? All right. We had here the chapter 2 from the Fable. And another Thoughtseize. There is a veto in Raja's hand. Could cast it here, although wouldn't deny him a 4-drop, I guess, for the turn, which are kind of where the heavy hitters come from. If we were to veto, considering it. And with the Field of Ruin in play, I mean, you did say maybe we'll see some strip mining. There are with the 2 basic lands in Jonathan's deck, so any additional land effects like that Rajan does draw will be able to just straight away kill lands. This is not a good hand. We're still flooded a little bit, which isn't shocking.
But again, this
given
this
how
is
he
again
started.
the benefit of having a 4/5 in your companion zone, because the best card Raja has access to right now is Yorion, but it's Unthoughtseizable.
Unthoughtseizable on turn 8, which I guess Raja does have the lands to achieve, and it's the censor. Is it possible Hobbs takes the censor here? Because if he doesn't care about the veto and just strips the ability, yeah, wow, there you go.
Yeah, makes sense.
Bloodtithe Harvester comes in, and Jonathan sees an opening and is trying to press through as much damage as he can get.
Although, yeah, the Restless, whatever it is, Anchorage,
that's true.
Holding back this Goblin token pretty powerfully. I really like Restless Anchorage in the blue deck.
That 3rd toughness is pretty significant. What do you get on that one? It's flying. When you attack, you get a map, or what do you get from there? It is.
Yeah, and the nice thing is with this Sunken Citadel, Raja could have both activated the Restless Anchorage, blocked, and then Field of Ruined one of the lands. And here we are. Every field of ruin from now on is going to be a strip mine.
Yeah, and it does actually matter, as Johnson did have 2 creature lands in play, and now loses the Hive of the Eye turn. Mutavault's still there. And yeah, that's got to be kind of deflating for Jonathan, with the doors seemingly open for an attack there, but being held off by a creature land while Raja just sits there.
Raja still being at 20 life too means he has so much time.
Yeah, he really does.
You often get in these games with blue-white versus Rakdos where you start to stabilize, but then you're down to like 6, 4, even 2 life, and all of a sudden like a top deck stomp kills you, for example. Very, very stressful.
All right, so with a handful of land and Dovin's Veto, what is Raja hoping here? Is there anything better than Memory Deluge off the top?
Yeah, I would say temporary lockdown wouldn't be terrible.
No, it would not.
Wandering Emperor would be really nice. Oh, actually, the best card off the top would be Dream Trawler.
Okay.
That card would just be absolutely devastating for Jonathan, with plenty of lands to discard to keep it hexproof.
Oh, Raja has a smile on his face. Let's see what he's got. If there's a Dream Trawler, at what point does this become a slow roll? When
Yeah, I guess the awkward thing about Dream Trawler is he has plenty of extra cards.
It'd be Liliana, right? That'd be the threat that would make him reconsider it. Okay, it is. Hall of Storm Giants comes into play tapped, and Jonathan uses the blood and discards Go Blank. Looking for some additional pressure, I suppose. That is a serious card that he's throwing away there. That's just not a random chaff extra land. Is that something you feel like at some point in the depth of the game you just decide, what addition, Raja has enough cards, discard 2 is just not worthwhile anymore?
Well, he does know that 2 of the cards in Raja's hand are lands that don't do anything, so right. I would say that's not a great use of the 3 mana. Now Jonathan willingly trading off one of his creatures to get some damage in finally.
Yeah, and it's going to be the Mutavault, it looks like.
Yeah, I love this choice by Raja. Get the land out of there so that Wraths later on are good draws.
Bone Crusher going to finish, or I'm sorry, Stomp going to finish off it's going to try, but it's going to fail. And that Dovin's Veto, which Jonathan knew about, and he has a second one. All right, so Jonathan expending all of his cards, but has cleared away Raja's board, sets him back a land, although he knows there are plenty extra. And empty-handed here, no threat of Liliana the Veil. And you called for...
I would just love to Vampiric Tutor a Wrath to the top of my library if I was in Raja's seat right now.
Yeah, a Wrath, a Dream Trawler. There were 2 Dream Trawlers in the deck, I believe. Raja with full information as to what Jonathan's got here. There's 1 Bone Crusher and Adventure. There are a couple creatures on the board. I guess the Reflection is actually going to go active this turn. That's not comforting, I'm sure.
Yeah, Raja's looking at a big hit next turn if he can't answer some of these creatures on board.
And a pass. Okay, so...
Notably, he is threatening to activate Hall of the Storm Giants as a blocker because of the Sunken Citadel.
Right, good call there, and that is significant. So, Jonathan going to bring out the Bone Crusher. And are we going to see a pass here? We are most definitely not. All right, Hall of Storm Giants.
Based on facial expressions, didn't see this block coming.
Yeah, I mean that's unfortunate. That's a fairly significant loss there, losing Blood Tithe Harvester. Reflection, I believe, is active at this point, so the plan is to copy Bone Crusher and a turn, I guess, instead of copying Blood Tithe right there and sent it in. Or maybe I lost track of the turns, but I think it was active there. Anyway, Raja's has to feel pretty good about himself. I mean, his lands are doing a lot of work here.
Yes, impressive showing for Sunken Citadel this match.
Mm-hmm. How's your feeling if you're playing against somebody that is deliberate like Raja, who really takes their time? Do you find yourself, because I'm sure some people get frustrated and some people are just content to have extra time to think and they're just relaxed and sitting there. What's your reaction in a situation like this?
It definitely depends somewhat on my own sort of mental headspace. But here's a nice end of turn copy Bone Crusher, then copy it again on your turn for an attack through the big hall.
Right. Yeah, that is even with the real Bone Crusher getting picked off. This is what 10 coming across. I mean that's a lot, and shielded to follow it up. That's a really nice turn for Jonathan.
Yeah, exactly one draw step, and Yorion has not left the companion zone this entire match.
All right, this was after attacking into the hall, I mean, I wasn't feeling great about Jonathan's chances, but Raja continues to not really do any. I mean, Raja's not casting spells. That's not a good way to win. And there is 4 land in Ottawara, and Jonathan Hobbs will pick up Pioneer and pick up the match. Raja Suleiman does not go back to back.
Congratulations to Hobbs for pulling off an impressive back against the wall victory. Needed to win basically 3 games in a row.
Yeah. And was able to do it. So Jonathan Hobbs will contest the finals. Raja Suleiman, really impressive run though. Wins last year, top 4 this year, but will have to earn his way back in next year alongside everyone else. Jonathan Hobbs, meanwhile, advances to the finals and will await the winner of our other match, which we're going to jump into right now as the players are still in action. It is not over yet. Matthew Hoey and Steven Dykman. Let's get to it. We know Steven Dykman won the first match of Pioneer, and that is all we know. So
excited to find out.
Yeah, me too. Let's all right. So we are in Modern right now, and this looks like it is
Rhinos versus Murktide.
Yeah, and this is the second format being played. So Standard's still to come if Matthew is able to win the next 2 games. Next 1 game, as we're going to game 3 here in Modern. So Murktide versus Rhinos. We saw that yesterday a little bit. 2 classic matchups or 2 classic decks in the Modern format these days. You have a feeling who's favored here? We are in the sideboard game already. So let's keep that in mind.
Are we in the 3rd game?
I believe we are. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is an extremely close matchup, highly dependent on just player configuration. But I would say that Rhinos is really good at pressuring the counter magic of Murktide, thanks to Mystical Disputes and all the flash things. But Murktide has a lot of early pressure and plenty of counter magic and permission. So, and looks like a Tidebinder as well to counter the cascade triggers. So I think this is as close to 50-50 as you can get in Modern, this matchup.
Okay, well, let's see how things play out. We are in game 3 here, so they're doing their best to prove you right. Let me bring up in fact, the players are still shuffling. If we have the deck list available for these players' Modern list. Let's go ahead and jump to them real quick. I'm sure they're pretty stock, but let's take a look, see if we can spot any outliers while things are getting going. If we don't have it in the next 10 seconds, don't worry about it. All right, so we'll just go from here. I can look at it on the side and say that we do have in Steven Dykman's list, we have 3 copies of Engineering Explosives. Some lists, I think we feel like we've seen 1 Chalice of the Void, maybe not present here. He does have a couple of Flusterstorms and Explosives to deal with the Cascade tricks of Matthew Hoey. And in his list, we have the Blood Moon effects. We have 4 copies of Endurance, which I feel like is not surprising. Anything stand out to you here?
Yeah, only 2 mystical disputes across the 75, if I'm looking at this correctly, which is
Right.
pretty atypical, I think. And definitely this is the matchup where you would be regretting that deck choice if you found yourself in this position. Though with the 4 endurance, those will probably be good in this matchup. They're great against the DRC and the Murktide. Apart from that, I don't see much else that I would really want.
Right. I mean, so we see 2 commandeers in Matthew Hoey's list, which, I mean, if that's where those other mystical disputes went, I mean, that's certainly nice to get some matchups, but that's not going to find much value here.
Yeah, I agree. Those are like my experience with that card is it's pretty much steal target to fairy or the One Ring are the 2 main things you want to hit with that. Neither of which obviously coming up here.
Yeah.
I would give the edge to Dykeman with these particular lists.
Okay.
But again, it's still very close.
Yeah, well, we'll see how this plays out. Yeah, see, it's funny. Commandeer it's kind of opposition dependent on your experience. So my experience with Commandeer is that it always steals Karn and then ruins my day.
Oh yeah.
So it's it's basically I guess whatever you're playing. I'll tell you this though, while the players are finishing their mulligans. The first modern RCQ I played in after this new Cascade Beanstalk deck came into existence, I played the Mirror. My opponent had 4 main deck Commandeers. I played turn 2 Beanstalk, which got commandeered, turn 3 Teferi, which got commandeered. And I just wanted to throw up. It was.
Oh my God. Wait, because they drew a card off of the Beanstalk after they commandeered Teferi. Yeah. That's crazy.
It's messed up. All right. Here we have a slightly less messed up, but still very strong opening for Steven Dykeman with Ragavan on the board.
Ragavan's a bit like up the Beanstalk.
Sure, yeah, cheap threat, provides advantage, does a good job of frustrating the opponent. And Matthew Hoey is able to dispatch that. Has to take a turn off from suspending Crashing Footfalls, which I'm sure he is willing to do. But yeah, although it is probably annoying to have Crashing Footfalls in your opening hand, not even be able to suspend it on turn 1.
Yeah, that's the real utility of Ragavan is prevent your opponent from it. Basically buys you a whole turn of Rhinos. Ragavan is often somewhat suspect against Rhinos because it's only good on the first 2 turns. It's eminently killable on those 2 turns, and then you eventually there's 4/4s in play and it doesn't get through. Murktide is the biggest exception to that. Murktide really utilizes the extra mana really well, and keeps Rhinos off the board into the late game very well. So it's sort of the perfect home for Ragavan in this particular matchup.
All right. Dragon Rage Channeler, the turn 2 play for Steven Dykeman, fetching up a basic island. And are we going to see a cantrip of some kind with a trigger? It looks like we are. Preordain, and Dykeman will resolve his trigger, and Matthew will just wait for a second turn, which will probably consist of nothing. Wow.
Oof. That's always a sign of strength.
Yeah. So if you're Matthew Hoey looking across and seeing injured explosives get binned on the surveil trigger, are you wow. I mean, that's
you see his reaction there. He's
yeah. And then we see this Preordain has another explosives in it, and Steven does play 3, had 3 coming in on the sideboard. So I mean, with the first one being binned, it could just be a lot of counter magic, but the odds of them being 1 in hand already seem fairly high.
Yeah, I could see binning the first one even if you didn't have a second one in hand, just because he's on the front foot right now and doesn't need the reactive spell. Needs just probably more counter magic, but looks like he bought him. Did he bought them both?
I believe he did, yeah.
I'm surprised he didn't keep the bobble, but maybe he already had one.
Maybe he did. Maybe he just has tricky fingers, and we missed that. But there is a bobble, whether he already had one or that one came off the Preordain.
Bit of a sleight of hand situation.
Exactly. Maybe he's stacking his deck. Maybe that's why all these explosives are showing up right away.
Funny to stack your deck and then surveil the cards you stacked your deck to the bottom.
I suppose that wouldn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
So it's probably easier to believe that he's innocent of all wrongdoing. He does check out the top of Mass deck. It is a Fire Ice.
And Delirium's on.
Yeah. Well, okay. So Fire Ice not going to kill Dragon Rage Channeler, but at least can buy Matthew a turn of damage if he so chooses. Also, Mystical Dispute, Force Negation in hand. So lots of tools. And Matthew's going to go with... Whoa.
Oh, no.
Well, all right. I think I didn't quite see how many mulligans the players took, but I think Matthew Hoey is not so adventurous to have kept a one-lander here on 7, so we can assume there was some involved. And how many turns does Matthew Hoey? How many turns can Matthew miss here and still be in this game? Is it 0 more?
Yeah, I think that if he doesn't draw a land here, it's probably over, especially with the second DRC coming down. But
Yeah.
okay, that's a land.
Okay. That is equivalent. Lorraine revealed gets island cycled here. Matthew will find a basic
But even
island.
drawing a land here, I mean, with Dykeman binning the engineered explosives, Hoey has to assume he either has another engineered explosives or just like a fistful of counter magic. So I would not be feeling good about my spot, even if I were to rip runner lands or whatever the perfect draws Hoey can have from here. I don't think they are likely to be good enough.
All right, 6 comes across here, Matt, and that's it. Matthew Hoey, short of lands, falling behind tempo-wise. Dykeman with a solid draw anyway, and will pick up the format and the match. So we have our finals. It will be Jonathan Hobbs versus Steven Dykeman. 2 players who have been on the series for a few years, 2 players who have had lots of success. Only one can walk out of here with the winner, with the 6,000, with the Pro Tour invite. Jesse Robkin and I will be back to take you through the finals in a moment. Stick around. This is NRG Championship. We'll be back. All right, we're back for the finals. Jesse Robkin, Joe Lissette here for NRG Gaming. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching us. We've got Jonathan Hobbs versus Steven Dykeman upcoming. And can we just take a second and celebrate that awesome new graphic we got for the championship this year? Fire breathing dragon and everything. Pretty slick, right? I think so. Jesse, finals coming up. You nervous? Are you excited? Are you worried? Are you out for glory? If you're in there, you were in their position. What's the mindset?
My audio.
You're good. Okay. Well, I'll answer the question first then. For myself, if I'm sitting down for this finals, I would love to say that like I have don't have delusions of grandeur. I'm not like seeing myself winning and being applauded and whatever. And like that stuff's all nice, but really I'm nervous. I'm not gonna deny. Sometimes people ask me at events, a player at a random table, like, oh, do you still get nervous? It's like, yeah, I do. Like maybe not for round 3 or round 6, but round 1 and, the elimination rounds. Yeah, I get nervous. Sure. I think that's natural. I think it's just a part of being excited about something, about caring about the outcome. What about you, Jesse? Okay. Jesse's got some issue there, or else I do, but I'm going to keep talking as I'm going to assume where things are working. And we'll move our way through. So you can see there our championship matchup. Steven Dykeman versus Jonathan Hobbs, the 2 players that have made it through to this point of the field. 16 players showed up. 16 players were invited to remain. Steven Dykeman, who started off the year winning the first 2 NRG events. Super impressive and held on to that lead all throughout the year. Jonathan Hobbs, also an impressive display. Obviously, he's here, but Dykeman was kind of like the mainstay, especially out of the gates. And so he's kind of the player that, a lot of people had their eye on coming into this. And he has proved his mettle. He went undefeated in pod play yesterday, the only one to make it through unscathed, and has made advanced all the way here to the finals. Now, Jesse, are you with me? All right, well, we'll get back to Jesse in a moment. We are, so we'll bring up the stage 4 graphic. We're in stage 4, the second part of stage 4 now. That's all that's left in the tournament is 2 players. So I'll give you a look at what's going to be contested here. We've got just 2 players left, but we've got 3 formats, Standard, Pioneer, and Modern. They're going to play all 3 if they need them. Jonathan Hobbs, by virtue, I believe, of being the higher seed, has selected Modern to begin with. And whoever wins that, the second format will be chosen by Steven Dykman, and he will have the choice there to go first. So, importantly, even if Steven breaks serve and wins the first format, he will still receive the right to choose the format and go first in the second match. So that's maybe not quite the way that you would expect it would work, being how normally we see game one in a match. Okay, if I lose, I get to choose in game two. That's not quite how it works here, because he has earned the right to choose for match two, regardless of what happens in the outcome of match one. I think the players are still getting ready. We're still waiting, trying to get Jesse connected. So let's go and look for a final time at what they're playing for. 6,000 up top and a Pro Tour invite. We had 4 players come into the field already having earned Pro Tour invites for Chicago. Neither one of these 2 were among those 4. So the winner of this event will earn an invite to Pro Tour Chicago, which is in, I think, 6 weeks. So that's exciting. That's a big thing. This is the first time NRG has been able to offer a Pro Tour invite. We're thrilled about that. The winner will also receive entry to defend their championship next year. As you see a picture of Raj Suleiman, who was our winner last year and made it all the way back to the top 4. Let's go and look at the deck list. We're going to start with Modern. Jonathan Hobbs has chosen Modern to start with. Jesse, are you with me?
Yes, sorry about that.
Right, that's okay. Don't worry about it. You just missed some, paper pushing stuff, talking about what's upcoming, what they're playing for. None of that matters. What people want to know is about what the matchups are, what the players are playing, and who has the advantage. So Hobbs chose Modern. It's going to be Scam, the Black-Red Mage Range deck for Jonathan Hobbs, and Blue-Red Murktide for Steven Dykman. Classic matchup. Ragavans on both sides, removal on both sides, discard versus cantrips and counters. It's kind of something that's shown up, throughout Magic's history, this kind of matchup. If you're just in the dark, would you rather be on the counter, not just in this matchup, just in general, would you rather be on the counter Magic side of things or the discard side of things?
That's a great question. I think discard is generally better off in the counterspell matchup because you get, not only do they both accomplish roughly similar things of like dealing with things before they actually hit the battlefield, but also you get to access to just sort of perfect information. So, for example, if you see a spell pierce in your opponent's hand, to play around it. If you see a counter spell, you can, try to make that counter spell awkward. So, generally speaking, I would rather be discarding than counterspelling.
Okay. And yeah, maybe the trade-off. Yeah, you do get full information. On the other hand, you have to. If you Thoughtseize a 3-drop, they don't have to spend the mana on the 3-drop. For you counter it, their mana is expended. So there is a give and take. But yeah, I think information is pretty valuable, and I mean, most of the matchups that you play, you're probably the more experienced, the more accomplished player. And so having information, I think, pays you off for having more knowledge of what's going on. Here, both players have a really good idea of what's going on. Let's go over to Jonathan's deck. The discard half of this, represented by Thoughtseize and Grief, the Scam package, as it's come to me. Do we still call it Scam, even though we lost half of the Scam package, not having Fury anymore? I don't know.
If anything, it's more of a scam now because it's even more like tilting when it happens to you. You're like, this is not supposed to happen as often.
Right. No, that is true. And it is probably, and there is still, I wondered, would we still see people expressing frustration about the scam package, even though it's going to happen less often, like you're saying, and we do, or at least, yeah, I think we still see people complaining about Grief. All right,
people like to cite the source of players will see Grief scams less often in the ban and restricted announcement. People love to call that out now.
Yeah. All right, let's go into the table. Players are ready. Looks like opening hands have been drawn, and we will get the finals underway. Thanks for being with us. We're excited. You can see they're right on the table. NRG Series Champion Trophy, waiting for a winner. And we're going to open with a Thoughtseize from Jonathan Hobbs. Dykman reveals his 7-card keep and looks like 1 land. So that'll give Jonathan some thought there. Do you take the cantrip? Do you take the Ragavan?
Yeah, this is a classic case of do you mulligan a hand that's somewhat risky against a Thoughtseize deck? That's not really where you want to be, but without even a preordained to help find your second land drop.
That's a counterspell, isn't it? I'm sorry. I was thinking that was a preordained. Okay, so Expressive Iteration is the choice. Jonathan looks like he's going to go for the card advantage. Leave Steven the Ragavan. I guess Ragavan's pretty easy to deal with for Jonathan Hobbs.
Yeah, especially if you have a Bowmaster, that's just the perfect answer to Ragavan.
Right, and Steven can't really avoid wandering into that, can he?
If he drew a land that turn, then I could see playing the Dragon's Rage Channeler and planning to dash the monkey, but...
All right, well, we are underway.
Hobbs doing his best Raja impression.
Yeah, so I actually thought that during the break, and whether I should comment on it or not, maybe it's a little harsh, but like, oh, well, things should proceed a little faster now that Raj is out of the tournament. But Hobbs taking, honoring him by pausing there before playing the Bowmaster, which he was most obviously going to play for the turn.
Yeah. The only real question is, do you wait until your opponent's turn? But no reason to play into. I guess, does Dykeman have any Stern Scoldings? Doesn't look like in the main deck.
No, he does have a Change the Equation, which is something that I feel like would be an outlier as far as main decks go, but maybe I'm just wrong on that.
I think it's starting to happen a little bit more and more. Like, if you just want a 5th counterspell, it's probably the best at that job, since so many threats in Modern are either red, green, or 2 mana or less.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if it was an outlier, okay, maybe it's not. But Dykeman certainly had some outliers in his Pioneer deck as well. So no fear of making the call that he thinks is correct, even if other people aren't doing the same thing. But getting your 1-drop wiped out by Bowmaster, well, lots of people are doing that, and they're not feeling any better about it than Steven is right now, probably.
Steven naturally ripping the second land like a master.
Yeah. But does he have the tools?
But here if he wants to remove it, he's got to worry about a Not Dead After All or something like that.
Yeah, I guess Not Dead After All doesn't just work with the scam Evoke Elementals, even though that's where it pays off the most sometimes. But with Counterspell mana up now, Jonathan may have to slow down a little bit. And Bowmaster's getting in anyway. He's not in any rush, probably.
Yeah, no hesitation at all, just turning the creature sideways. Might have been worth thinking about whether or not to play a 3rd land if you have it, to try to play around a Spell Pierce if you're trying to use Not Dead After All.
Yeah, that's
he
true.
does know most cards in Steven's hand.
All right, so this is Fetch and Fable into the counterspell he knew about. And Steven draws a 3rd land. So this is not too bad, given how things started. I mean, Steven still can't be thrilled about losing his Ragavan basically for free.
Yeah.
But you move past that, and that's something that I personally had a really hard time dealing with, kind of moving into the new current age of Magic with the Modern Horizons 2 cards, is that card advantage just isn't as relevant as it was before. There's so many ways to, like, if you get 2 for 1, you can just get it back. And that's something that is just inherent in the way Magic is designed nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many ways to punish card advantage anyway, with Shieldred and Bowmaster. Yeah, I mean, with the dust starting to settle, Jonathan having looks like 2 cards in hand to Steven's 4. And Bowmaster is good when it hits the battlefield, and it's good when it's a surprise. But when it's sitting in play, it's a little bit not quite as impactful.
Sure. And yeah, Steven with that the land tapped there, looking like he
trying to decide if he wants to hold up this counterspell or if he wants to get the DRC trigger.
Yeah, and she goes with the counterspell. But definitely made up his mind. I'm definitely killing that. I'm just undecided on what else I'm doing. And
I think there's some argument to just playing the DRC and passing with counterspell up, because you can just take another 2 damage.
Right. No, that definitely was reason, and especially with Jonathan being light on cards, and there is a counterspell. Oh, Steven Dykeman, we're in the finals of the NRG Series event. You can't have matching card arts? Come on. You're just, simple-minded commentator doing their best here, and you're trying to just add to the pain of trying to identify cards these days. Anyway.
Yeah, but there's psychic damage you're dealing your opponent every time you use a different counterspell.
That is true.
This is another, like, you know, in that case with the slamming the counterspell there with the grief, if the DRC had stayed in, I think it would have been worth 1 damage to have the threat in play this turn. But
sure, and also to get the surveil trigger that just is, by the wayside with the way he chose to do it. But this still will work. Do we have Delirium at the moment? It looks like no.
Yep, we are 1 short.
So Jonathan can attack in here. And it looks like one will come across some sort of a spell here to achieve Delirium in response would be great, but there's not that many things that do that, are there? Without considers in the deck lists anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not really much way to do that at all, except like a bolt.
And are we gonna bolt Hobbs' life total to try and surveil into Delirium? That seems it seems unlikely. I think that we would see that from Steven here at this point in the event, or at any point, really. Steven came up shy on his 4th land drop last turn, so obviously has some action in hand, whereas Hobbs is ranges 4th, but with 2 cards. The grief last turn was a good attempt, but now just nothing. That's maybe he's sitting on removal, maybe he's just petered out.
I think I saw a lightning bolt and a black card of some kind in his hand.
Okay. Well, a lightning bolt is tricky. Obviously there's some incentive to get this Dragon Rage Channeler off the board before it gets any more surveilling done, but then you don't want to have a Dash Ragavan come down after that, even if it's off the top, and just ruin your day. And there is Delirium. So Steven now has a fully powered Dragon Rage Channeler with the Polluted Delta going in, and it will meet the bolt from Jonathan, and the board is cleared. So given how this played, another counterspell. Okay, well.
Back to the same art again, looks like.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite counterspell art?
Most of my favorite artworks are just based on what was my first experience with the card. So mine is the mage with the fizzled out spell from Revised.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Now, someone in the chat is surely saying that art's from Alpha or whatever, but not in my mind. It's not. That is the art from Revised. All right. Ragavan comes across, finds another Ragavan. So this is kind of the, even though the creatures got killed, the bolts interchanged, Steven counterspelled again, but with Steven tapped out going to Jonathan's turn, there was the window there for a decent draw, and he did find one, Dash Ragavan into Steven's Ragavan, which will stay on the board.
Did he use the treasure to cast it? Oh, he had to. He didn't have any more red sources. Yeah, this is one of my favorite matchups in Modern. It's just so swingy and so many incremental decisions that pay off later and exciting top decks and such like.
Yes, indeed. Now, here's the part where Dragon Rage Channeler's drawback actually is a drawback, as this damage race for Steven, sure, he's gaining a point, but that's not really probably worth Ragavan connections. But he can't stay back and block. Although looking through the graveyard, there's only one thing that Murktide players look at their graveyard for generally. And there is the big Murktide.
The biggest Murktide.
Yeah. Jonathan, do you have... You don't. Okay. So Steven Dykman will pick up game 1 of Modern in the finals. Jonathan Hobbs had to play there, but may have mulliganed a little bit. And even though Steven was the one that actually had the 1-land hand. And things are so at this point. If you're nervous going in, once you get a game under your belt, I think you, at least for me, you probably settle down a little bit and you kind of just were like in your sideboard. Now you're not nervous. Now you're just playing Magic. You agree, or do you think nerves kind of persist throughout the whole thing for you?
I do think that tends to happen, but I think that is almost a trap. Like it's pretty easy. One of my big issues as a player is I'll win game 1 and I'll be okay. I just have to win one of the next 2. Surely I'm going to get one of them, and then all of a sudden I lose game 2 and I enter game 3 being like, oh, what happened to my buffer?
It should be. I mean, it's not. We build up our confidence on these small advantages that it turns out really were kind of insignificant after all. Like you're saying, all right, let's look at this. Let's look at the deck list. look at the sideboarding, we are in Modern. Jonathan Hobbs, Black Red mid-range. Jonathan did choose Modern. So whether or not Jonathan wins this match, Steven will have choice of the second format of the finals.
Looking at this sideboard, my experience is there's not a ton you want like in this matchup from this sideboard. You've got like the Shield Druid is going to be good. I could see playing the Kolaghan's Command as a grindy card. Bonecrusher Giant doesn't have that many good targets, so I would not bring it in personally. And then the big question is whether you want these Leyline of the Voids. It's the kind of matchup that gets grindy. Drawing one late is pretty awkward and unfortunate. But having one in your opening hand is pretty like Murktide can't really threaten you if they don't have a graveyard. So
right. Yeah, I don't know. It's the this is pretty elementary to say, but like having stuff like Fable in the deck or Seasoned Pyromancer like Jonathan does kind of, ameliorates that the crappiness of drawing Leyline in turn 2 or turn 3. But
yeah. You can also pitch it to a Grief if you need to.
Yeah, right. That's a good point too. So there is probably I guess it comes down to how many cards does Jonathan want to take out in order to fit that in. And there's a couple. Molten Collapse isn't super exciting, I wouldn't say. I mean, I guess it kills Murktide. Anything that kills Murktide is probably
you need to keep in your Murktide answers.
Yeah.
I trim. So first of all, Magus is the first obvious cut. But if I am looking for trims, I sometimes reach for a couple Griefs. The card lines up somewhat awkwardly, especially once Stern Scolding's in the deck. It's hard to spend 4 mana on. And pitch casting it, like the Grief Scam is at its worst against Murktide, both because they can refuel with a single expressive iteration, or they can play a really big, they can punish you for discarding 2 cards by playing a really big Murktide, and they just have a ton of removal for it. So I think trimming a couple of those and maybe 1 or 2 of your scam effects is pretty reasonable.
Sure. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at Steven Dykman's Is It Murktide list. As you mentioned, the 1 change of equation in the main deck, 1 force of negation to go alongside it. And even though this graphic shows matching counterspells, Steven, not that kind of guy.
Don't be fooled.
No. And looking at the sideboard, you mentioned the Stern Scoldings. They're indeed there.
Brotherhood's End looks excellent in this matchup. Dealing 3 to all creatures, it's just I would definitely be bringing that in. I think Dress Down is maybe reasonable. Big question is how many counterspells you want in your deck post-board. You need some number to punish them for just tapping out for their big threats. But 1, maybe 2 is pretty trimmable. This Force Negation can also hit the deck.
Yeah, that doesn't do a ton here. So neither deck feels like it's gaining a ton of cards, but is Stern Scolding the best card coming on either side, or is there is that the top card? Is that top anything Hobbs has?
Brotherhood's End is also pretty impactful. But yeah, Stern Scolding is certainly the card that I am most excited to reach for when I'm playing against Scam. Just almost every threat they play, except for Shield Druid, I think, and Fable.
Right. So either way, you would say that Steven's gaining more than Hobbs is at this point.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think this matchup is slightly favored for Is It Murktide. So, and especially for these reasons.
Okay, well, we'll see how it plays out. This was Hobbs' choice, but he did make this choice knowing he was going first. And so, as was discussed earlier, I mean, you conceivably would choose the format not because you think it's a good one for you. You might choose it because you think it's a bad one for you, or a close one because you have the edge of going first this time out, and may not necessarily later in the round. Yeah,
I certainly think it's a close matchup. But for the reasons we saw, like Murktide is one of the better top decks that either deck has access to. The real thing is to hit a Murktide off of your Ragavan and then cast it.
So I just saw this when Hobbs drew his hand and he checked and yeah, Hobbs drew 8 cards.
Oh no. I do this all the time.
Do you? Okay.
It's so bad. Yeah, I'm very accustomed to the forced mulligan.
Jesse, that's not what people look up to you. How can you be telling us that?
Look, never meet your heroes.
All right, so Jonathan Hobbs on the mulligan already without even having the benefit of looking at his hand. So not the great spot to be in, but I mean things happen. Dexterity errors are abundant among us nerds, I suppose. And well, Steven will keep his hand. So that's just an unfortunate turn of events there. We'll see if he can dig his way out. Maybe this will frustrate his mind into wow, yeah, boy.
Did he do it again? Oh.
I mean,
no, okay.
I mean,
it looked like ace for a second.
He didn't do it again, but that was fairly casual, I would say, way to draw your cards after having just drawn 8 in the first game or in the previous time through. But okay, Ragavan's on the board.
Well, that's the thing when you make a mistake like that, you can't let it get to your head. There's plenty of time to feel bad about it after the match is over, but in the middle of the match, just got to move on.
That's not my specialty. One little blip happens 3 turns later. I'm still thinking about that, not about what's going on in the current part of the game. But all right, we'll expect more from Hobbs than I do from myself as Steven starts with a bobble here. And what do we have? We have an answer for this, Ragavan? If not, that's a great way for Jonathan to get right back in the game. Steven doesn't look thrilled right now.
Yeah, he might not have an answer. Although this is one of those cases where he does have an answer. Okay. Or does he? It could be one of those cases where you bobble looking for your answer, but then you have to shock in case you draw it. But if you don't draw it, it's extra bad that you had to shock.
Yeah, that is. Let's see. It's another bobble. Yeah, I don't think he's got it yet. He has preordained in hand, but if he's looking for an answer to Ragavan, he may not want to cast it. This is tough. This is a lot to contemplate here for Steven just on the first turn.
And it looks like he might have a preordained to cast, which if he didn't have bobble triggers coming, he could at least stack a bad card on top of his library for Ragavan to hit, but the bobble triggers means he's not going to be able to do that.
No. And so do you take 2 draws at a potential removal spell? And Steven says no. He's just going to preordain and let the Ragavan hit him, which is probably not what he's looking for. He does have the island preordained there. And like you're saying, he can't sandbag the island for Hobbs to hit. So almost stunningly, after Hobbs flubbed his mulligan this game, he's already kind of recovered and looking to be in decent shape.
Yeah. Untapping with a Ragavan. Best feeling in Modern.
All right. No joy on the flip there, but still.
Didn't need to stack the deck in order to have a bad card off top.
But more importantly, will we find out, does Steven find... Okay, there is Unholy Heat in hand now.
Looks like we're getting a turn 2 Fable, which is just the absolute perfect follow-up for this Ragavan.
Yeah, especially since Steven's already going to have to commit mana to stopping the Ragavan. So yeah, Fable will likely connect, and Hobbs is off and running. There it is.
Absolute also, dream start for Jonathan.
Yeah. Also has Not Dead After All in hand. So there was maybe an option as far as not playing the Fable this turn, even though this does seem like the better decision. Some thought had to be spent on, well, do I try and just save the Ragavan?
It's so funny that Jonathan looks the exact same while crushing his opponent on turn 2 as he does when he's getting crushed by Raja. Just so calm.
And you have to be. I mean, you draw 8 cards in your opening hand. Like, well, can anything worse than this happen? Probably not. So I'll just relax and go with it and play my cards. And you have to rely on yourself. You're a good player. Jonathan Hobbs knows he's a good player. He just has to remind himself of that one little slip up
absolutely
doesn't mean curtains for the match. Drag range counter for Steven. Close to Delirium, likely to find it as soon as the Unholy Heat is cast. maybe some desire to wait for Steven to see what happens, but it's so much safer to get this unholy, especially against a scam deck, to get the unholy heat, to get the Ragvan killed now while Jonathan's
Yeah,
tapped
absolutely.
out.
And if Steven doesn't or if Jonathan doesn't have a removal spell, he does get to hold back the Goblin token, but looks like I did see a bolt in there.
For a second, I thought the bolt was getting discarded the Fable, and I was fairly surprised, but you're right, it's just being cast.
Yeah, I think he just discarded the cliffs.
The land, yeah.
Is this a discard a land of Fable? Don't play your third land?
It is. Well, you've got treasures, right? What do you need lands for?
Another thing that happens to me all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's easy to be too, not to say that Jonathan made a mistake here, but it is easy to be too aggressive with Fable.
Yeah.
And because like, well, I don't need to play this land. I'll play the next land, and then it's not there, and then you're regretting your life.
Yeah, the thing, like, if you have a land on top of your library, it's really good to have looted it away. But if there's not, then it's really bad to have done so. So generally, if I only have one land and I need my land drop this turn, I err on the side of holding on to it. But he might not need it.
Yeah, that is certainly true. Steven with a full grip and figure out what to do here. And if there's something like iteration cast here, something even like Murktide, I guess, actually in the cards already, it wouldn't be a big Murktide, but it would be cheap. And it's going to be an iteration.
Probably one of Steven's most important cards in this matchup. Just so efficient, getting ahead on cards.
And there was an Unholy Heat as well as a land, and I didn't catch the third card there, but certainly things to do for Steven Dykman. Breaks the. I'm pretty sure somewhere above 90% of expressive iterations find Mishra's Wobble, especially when you're tapped out. But this one did not.
Yeah, I think I saw a blue card in addition to the Unholy Heat. But...
All right, we'll figure out what Steven went with. And up on cards heavily, Jonathan with 3 cards in hand, but a somewhat of a board presence, even if the token goes down here, which, I mean, I suppose Steven has more incentive to kill the token because Jonathan missed a land drop, but the reflection is also a relevant thing that's going to become imposes itself on the board in a couple turns.
Yeah, that's future Steven's problem.
Yeah, that is very true. Here is a Bowmaster for Jonathan. So expressive iteration, in addition to all the other good qualities it has, does not actually generate draws for Bowmaster to take advantage of. All right, cross for 2 and reflection looming. Reflection, I guess, has to be summoning sick, right? I mean, just as far as designing cards go, but I mean, it doesn't feel like it necessarily should be. You've had to wait a couple turns already. Can't it have haste?
Yeah. If he's Kiki Jiki, I mean, Kiki Jiki famously has haste.
Yeah. So and it costs mana to activate. I mean, isn't that enough of a downgrade already?
And like, maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it should just have haste and not cost mana to activate.
Well, let's not be silly here. I mean, Hobbs does miss his land drop again.
Now Jonathan gets to do the favorite move by scam players is just put a bunch of scary threats into play and hold up Not Dead After All.
Yeah. And Steven with enough mana to play removal and hold up counterspells if he has them. Ideally, though, probably just all creature would work best. He's definitely got the counterspells covered. And a pass. So reflection does go active. I feel like that's a rarity.
Yeah, I love this patience from Jonathan. No need to immediately copy it.
Ooh. All right. Subtlety, just as a flash creature, is maybe enough to be a nuisance here.
Yeah, although if it blocks one of the 1/1s, and
Mhm.
then if it blocks, say, Orcish Bowmasters, Steven not dead after all, it comes back and then copies the Bowmaster, that's 3 damage to kill it. And then alternatively, if he blocks the Orc army, Jonathan can just copy the Bowmaster, grow the Orc army, and ping the thing down. So either way, this 3/3 is not long for this world.
No, it will absorb some damage, and Steven somehow is at only 7 life already. So yeah, blocking is in order, but you have spelled that out exactly correct. There's no real ideal scenario here for Steven. Jonathan's gonna take advantage of him no matter what happens.
Yeah, blocking the Orc army or the Bowmaster makes sense because that plays around what's on board. You lose to what's in the hand, but
Yeah,
good beats. And let's see. Oh, does he have? Oh, he can choose between Malakir Rebirth and Not Dead After All. The dream.
Yeah, it's a dream. Although if Jonathan's spending enough time thinking about this, is he telegraphing to Steven that he actually has multiple effects here? I wonder. I don't even know if that something like that matters really. I mean, Jonathan may just contemplate all his actions at this rate and just to not give anything away. And I think reading information from players' hands is maybe not a key aspect of Magic. It's something that, if you can do it reliably, sure, that's great. But you can easily overdo it and then get yourself stuck. Here is the copy. Clearly, the spotter judge not in favor of Nerd Rage. Branded advertising covers up our QR code token with an actual token.
Yeah, I don't know. I would probably, it maybe just doesn't matter because you're so far ahead, but I think there's some argument for leading on the other token or the other Not Dead After All. Because and save the worst one for a last resort sort of thing. Doing some counting here. Something.
So that last counter shouldn't have connected with Steven. Yeah, Steven takes 2, not 3, even though it's a 3/3 now. Yeah. And yeah, I actually see what you're saying, because the Not Dead After All, with the inherent point of damage that comes with it, with Steven at 5, it would be nice maybe to have that actually on the board already.
Here's where that Brotherhood's End. Oh, I guess it wouldn't even work against the Not Dead After All in hand, but Brotherhood's End would be good against what's on board here.
Yeah, that would drop. I mean, Steven would still be taking damage incoming, but it would be seemingly better than the alternative of just dying, which is where he's facing right now. Well, we know what that means, but only 1 land tapped.
It's mini Murktide.
And it is. Dragon Rage Channeler joins the fray.
Is this a painful preordain? Okay.
Yeah, this is tough. I mean, we're looking at the point where Steven's counterspell in hand. He can't, if he has to cast the counterspell this turn, he might actually just be dying to the board anyway. And now this Orc army actually outsizes the Dragon Rage Channeler.
Yeah, it might be a no good option situation for Steven.
Yeah.
But at least he got to take a game action.
Is that even a positive thing when your game action is growing your opponent's creatures? Costing you life?
Turns out turn 1 Ragavan, turn 2 Fable.
Yeah, I guess
puts you up in a good spot the remainder of the game.
So I see a Dothy Voidwalker in Jonathan's hand, and it's just going to be just the Orc Army. Okay. Force a chump block, and counterspell is run out. This is interesting, the way that happened. It's probably about as good as it could have gone for Steven this turn, even though he's still
honestly,
in bad shape.
A top decked Murktide Regent would I guess you'd also need a removal spell, because the question is, do you tap out of your Not Dead After All to end of turn copy this Orc Army, Bowmaster?
If Steven doesn't add anything to the board, I think you probably can, because the Orc is still deadly on its own. Steven agonizing over a lot of his decisions here. I mean, and he doesn't have it. He doesn't have a route through, and Jonathan Helps will tie up the match despite actually drawing 8 cards in his opening hand. So we move on. Game 3 of Modern upcoming. First of the 3 formats. Pace of play slow-ish in the top 4 in the finals, which is understandable. I mean, there's a lot on the line here for these players. You don't, I mean, this is what you cherish, right? The opportunity to play for things that you care about in formats you enjoy. I mean, this is what we play for. And these players earn the right to be here, and they're not, you don't want to mess up once you're here. You don't want to draw 8 cards in your opening hand twice. You want to do as much as you can, because you want to keep playing. And I feel like that's a lot of times in the events, what you want is to be able to keep playing in the event. And while both these players are done after this round, you still want to play as much as you can and just enjoy yourself, because these moments are hard to come by.
Absolutely. I think my finals match last year lasted around 3 or 4 hours total. You want every moment of it. There's nowhere else you'd rather be than. And the worst thing that could happen is you like make some mistake because you rushed too quickly, and then you spend the next year of NRG tournament play just thinking about how you could have won the finals of the championship if you had just taken another second longer to think about your play.
Yeah, I remember as the players are getting ready for game 3, I don't think we need to go through the deck lists again. I remember my first time playing in a finals in a Star City event. I won game 1. I've told this story before, but I know we have a lot of new viewers. It's been a few years since I talked about this. I think I won game 1. Game 2, if I either play a dual land instead of a fetch land on turn 3 or fetch main phase, I win the tournament. Either one of those 2 things, I gave no thought to it whatsoever, played a fetch land and passed, ended up losing the game because of it, and then lost game 3. And it's just, I mean, that was 12 years ago. I'm not over it yet. These things where it's just like you want to give thought to even things that seem small, because mistakes are magnified when the stakes mean more to you.
Absolutely. There's no amount of wins that erases a particularly brutal loss.
Right. Well, we have a minute here while the players are shuffling up. Do you have a brutal loss? Do you have some, or even a stupid one? Do you have an equivalent to drawing 8 cards in the finals in your opening hand that you can share with us?
Man, I about a year ago in the final tournament of the 2022 season, I was playing against Connor Mullally in our winning in for top 8. And this match, he was the front runner for the MVP of the year. And if I won out, I was going to jump him and become the top player on the leaderboard. And it was game 3 of a good matchup, mono white against mono green. And I had my whole, I had a great hand. I had my first 3 or 4 turns planned out. And then I drew a card that made not that turn better, but the turn after even better. It helped me curve. But I was so excited that I skipped the second turn that I was doing, and I just slammed it onto the table, and then immediately realized, oh, I forgot to use this Brutal Cathar to remove his old growth troll, and the whole thing came crashing down from there, and I was eliminated. And I've been thinking about that not every day, but maybe every other day since it happened.
No, they stay with you, and it's good stuff, and it's fond memories. But it's also, yeah, you want your learning moments to come in practice matches, not on camera. But that is the reality of things. All right, game 3 underway here. Steven starts with a bobble on himself.
The bobble scry trick is one of my favorite things to do in Modern. It's so fun.
It's so cool. Yeah, little tiny intricacies, even if they come up frequently, that just makes them more useful. But yeah, very enjoyable. And the depth of the game is, I think, why we don't get tired of it.
Absolutely. And it's one of the reasons Modern is such a fun format. Just like a card like Mishra's Bobble that was unassuming when it was first printed, becoming a staple and interacting with one of the best aspects of Modern, which is fetch lands.
The best aspects.
Well, one of the most
might get some hate mail on that one. Yeah.
I don't want to open that can of worms per se. I do think it's nice that I think fetch shock mana bases are really interesting personally, but I know a lot of players dislike them.
All right, Ragavan to play on both sides. Does Steven have removal spell to clear the way?
This is the most nerve-wracking play, is playing your Ragavan hoping it can block your opponent's Ragavan.
Yeah. Okay.
How many times have you cast Ragavan in your life?
Me?
Joe?
Are we counting cube from this week? It's a small. It's not a big number.
I figured it might be even the single digits.
It's a small number. I have been on the receiving end of plenty of Ragavan hits, though, so I will understand the frustration. I remember a team event from maybe a year or two ago where I Ragavan hit on turn 2. My opponent cast Might to Fairy. My teammates looked over and like, oh, Joe's dead. And it's just
yeah, that's so brutal.
How it goes.
This is the
sometimes.
absolute perfect, DRC to surveil off of the removal spell and hit with Ragavan. Oh, and hit a Thoughtseize.
Yeah, that is
Holy
brutal.
Cow.
Yeah, and Steven, it's hard to not take the value here with your treasure and get an extra.
This is the Murktide equivalent of a turn 2 Fable out of Scam.
Right. This is rough. And even now, Steven really thinking this over. Can I
think he might be thinking about whether he wants the card on top of his library.
Okay. Right. Okay. So the Thoughtseize is already on the stack then?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah. All right.
Tough call. I love when a player is really far ahead and is just like agonizing over a decision.
Yeah, it's cool to see that people care, that they want to maximize every advantage. But then as your viewer, you're like, oh, come on, we all know what you're doing.
And also, as a person, like if I was Jonathan getting Thoughtseized here, I would just be like absolutely mauling that my opponent is like taking on their surveil and I'm so dead.
All right, the draw looked like it was another Ragavan, and there is not after all type card in hand. I don't know which one it was, but there's one of them, I think. So I guess Jonathan can play that and have a blocker and a mana up. Yeah, the rest of the hand, I saw Shieldred. That's not going to do much for a while.
I think there was a Terminate as well.
Okay.
But yeah, this is the type of game where losing Fury is just such a beating, because previously, if you were in this spot, you could just evoke a Fury, and then if you were lucky, even just scam the Fury. But in this case, looks like Ragavan is once again on blocking duty.
Well, it didn't work out so well the first time around.
Yeah, this time at least he's maybe holding up and not dead after all, but that doesn't help against this combat step as it enters tapped.
But Steven does know the contents of the hand, so maybe, let's see, artifact, land, instant. So I don't think we have flying yet for Dragon Rage Channeler.
Yeah. Steven Dykeman says, look at me, I'm the perfect information deck now.
Is it possible there's no attack here? Yeah, there isn't. Wow. That's understandable, but kind of shocking given how the last turn went.
Yeah, this is huge gift for Jonathan. If he's gonna start coming back into the game, it starts here. Oh, but no land drop, no play.
Oh, That's got to be discouraging. You get gifted a turn there. Gifted is the wrong word, but you receive a turn there, able to rebuild your presence, and you actually do nothing at all.
No Bowmaster, or at least not yet. I guess even if you had one, you'd probably wait until the Surveil resolved.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Certainly, way too many players react to triggers and not to that. Like they time things incorrectly, but you are right. No reason to give Steven the information that you have Bowmaster at this point. Well, actually, maybe in this specific case, maybe there would be a reason because you wouldn't want to surveil into delirium or allow your opponent to surveil into delirium.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, the Dragon Rage Channeler is definitely what you'd want to ping here.
Well, even maybe with frustration of some things that happened in this match, missing a land drop, drawing an extra card, or drawing an extra in your opener, Jonathan still has the solace of knowing that he's got additional matches to play here. This is not one format and done. This is the finals, but this is the first match of the finals. Jonathan can still recover this even if he's unable to pick up this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Does hurt to if you chose the format and you're staring down potentially losing, but it's possible he chose this format because it's the format where he wanted to be on the play for, not necessarily because it's the matchup he likes the most.
Right. All right. So Unholy Heat on Ragavan. Both players aware that this could be saved, but still opening the gates for an attack potentially.
Jonathan deciding whether or not to not dead his thing.
Steven reading not dead after all. I wonder what intricacy of the card he's unaware of. That
I think probably whether enters tapped or not.
Okay, sure.
Ooh, Spell Pierce when your opponent misses a land drop feels so good.
Yeah, that's pretty harsh. And Grief flips over. Okay.
Any odds Steven has a black card in hand to pitch to this?
It seems low. Is there some Consigned to Dream, I guess, would work as a blue card that's a split card that maybe you could have, but yeah, there's not much.
Yeah.
Maybe that's some hybrid.
That's why you need to have Surgical in your sideboard so you can right on time, third land drop.
All right, Molten Collapse to Ragavan, get that out of there. But 11 life and 3 coming across. Steven with several cards in hand. No additional play. Okay, well, maybe there's life here.
Over.
Yeah.
This Douthie is sure to eat a Stern Scolding.
Mm-hmm. There's Unholy Heat and
maybe not. I guess with doesn't block. Even if it did have flying. Looks like Steven only has 2 cards in hand.
Yeah, and one of them's Unholy Heat. This is, I mean, it's still not looking great, but this is, Jonathan is not as screwed as I thought he was. Maybe there is a window here.
And 1 bolt already used, so there's only 2 left in Dykeman's deck.
All right. Terminate, fired off. This is going to resolve. This is, I'm sure Jonathan Hobbs is more surprised than anyone watching that he's still in this game.
That treasure token in Steven's land row is really tilting me.
And here's a shield,
and
that Stern Scolding.
Dykeman potentially regretting not Stern Scolding this this Douthie Voidwalker, if that's what's in his hand.
Yeah. All right. Unholy Heat takes down Shielded. No problem there for Steven. But now at 9 life and okay, going to 8. And now this, if you're Jonathan, you have to, at this point, be thinking, I actually could win this game. I could actually win this match. And then if you lose, then it's even more crushing. But still, at this point, there's a few cards left in hand. Jonathan always has kind of a grin on his face, but that's a real smile there. He's probably thinking to himself, like, I could do this.
It is such a great feeling. Oh, it's a spell pierce, not a stern scolding. That's what's going on.
Okay.
But it is such a great feeling to think you're losing, all of a sudden be like, wait, am I actually going to win this game?
Mm-hmm.
Complete attitude shift.
All right. Dash Ragavan reduces Jonathan's life a little further. So I guess now he has confirmation that Steven does not have a bolt. Draws Fable, which, if you're correct about the...
Maybe checking to see if he has a counter spell in his exile zone. Is he going to cast the DRC to get a Surveil trigger?
Wow.
Oh, no, to block the Ragavan. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm. The Fable does the same if it resolves. But yeah, I guess the Surveil trigger is pretty valuable, so he's going to try and line up that way. Now Steven's got to work his mind around his Dragonrage Channeler coming into play for Jonathan. Auto-Aura is already on the board, so that's one less concern.
Checking his own delirium count. He's got all the usual suspects.
This game has become fairly interesting, I would say, which 5 minutes ago seemed unlikely.
Yeah, credit to Jonathan for continuing to stay in it. Keep, considering what the best play is on any given turn.
All right. Fable does find that spell
Fable
pierce.
Before the Surveil trigger can happen. You snap off the spell pierce, and then you can say, sorry, you missed your trigger for the Surveil.
All right, so there is the Surveil trigger. Jonathan's going to keep. Hopefully, he doesn't have a... okay.
Yeah, Blackcleave Cliffs is a little bit less painful to have to play post getting your thing spell pierced.
No play from Steven. All right, 3 across. Jonathan can't do anything about that. Ragavan now does have a Bone Crusher and a Voidwalker.
Oh, and there finally eats the Stern Scolding. So I guess it was sitting in the hand the whole time.
Yeah. All right. So if this Ragavan comes dashing across again, you have to kill it, right? You don't just save the Bone Crusher Stomp for a Steven to try and finish him off with your Dragonrage Channeler?
That's a really tough call. I think I agree that you do just have to kill it, but...
Oh, he's just going to cast it. Okay.
Oh, I mean, that works.
That works. It does
It kind of does both things, right? It blocks the Ragavan and...
Yeah. It does allow the Ragavan to itself block. Steven, okay, preordained. That's got to be very scary. That is there's a bolt. And that will do it. And Steven Dykman will win Modern after what turned out to be a very hard-fought Game 3.
What a game. Holy cow.
That one
well played by both players.
Yeah, that one is one to remember. And I really came down to that was one where those players go back and watch. If there's anything they're regretting, they can really that was a very small margin that led to the outcome of that game.
If there's any decision that sticks out to me, it would be not Stern Scolding the Douthie Voidwalker when it came down. Just seems like it got him for so many points of damage. Although again, he still top decked the bolt when he needed it, so maybe it didn't matter.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, that concludes the Modern portion of the finals. Steven Dykman up a format, so he just needs to win one of the next two. He also gets to choose what the next format will be. So we're gonna step away for a moment. We'll come back. We'll see what Steven's choice is. He'll be on the play for match number 2. See if he can finish off Jonathan Hobbs and complete his year. The Nerd Rage year started with Steven Dykman winning the first 2 events on the opening weekend. Can he finish out the year with a championship? We'll find out. We'll be right back. All right, we're back here in the midst of the finals of the NRG 2023 Championship. Jill is set, joined by Jesse Robkin, and players are getting ready to play Pioneer, which was Steven's choice here for the second match. So, Jesse, it's a more or less a mid-range mirror in Pioneer and a mid-range mirror in Standard that he did, or semi-mirror that he had the option of. So, going first, obviously, either way is helpful. Standard or Pioneer? Do you think Standard going first is more important? Do you think Pioneer is more important?
It's a tough call. I think in Standard, maybe it's a little bit less important. You have make disappears to help you break serve on the draw and cut downs as well. Nice efficient ways to sort of turn the tables on your opponent who's on the play, which is not so much the case in a Rakdos mirror. You know, the person who gets to go discard into 2-drop, into 3-drop is generally better off than the person who is on the back foot in that case. So I think it makes sense to do with this, and especially because, you know, up a match, just, you know, Steven has the opportunity to finish Jonathan right here.
Yeah.
Take down the entire tournament.
All right, we'll see how it goes. Players have presented. We'll go ahead and go down to the table because I'm sure everyone's eagerly awaiting to see how many cards Jonathan Hobbs draws this time around.
Might as well draw 9 at this point if you're going to get a 4.
I mean, sure.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll take it back now. After presenting decks, then we got bluffs by Jonathan Hobbs by wanting to take a bathroom break. So,
skillfully being the first to take a bathroom break in this round.
All right. So between rounds, I'm being harassed by our director. Because if there's 2 things I'm told repeatedly while doing these shows, 1 is be more energetic, and 2, it's remind people to follow the channel. Now, you at home can't really do anything about the first one of those, but the second one you can. So if you're watching at home or in your car, although hopefully not while driving or whatever you're doing, give us a follow if you appreciate the content. If you want to be notified when we go live for future events, we do have an upcoming slate. NRG Series is back next year. Jesse, you can be competing. You're going to be back out here again, trying to get back in the championship.
I'm going to do what I can. I like that there's going to be more showdown opportunities, like when those Sunday tournaments are showdowns. Certainly am going to try to make it out to the Chicago one. And then from there, it'll depend on how that goes, basically.
Okay.
But yeah, if you want to rile up Joe, chat, go ahead and tell him how Lotus Field is unplayable in the chat, and that should get some energy out of him. And if you want to talk about Tron too while you're at it, you might as well.
Tron is a maybe below average competitive deck in Modern. I will not fight that. It's fine, right? Like, there's no shame.
Lotus Field, all you need is Strict Proctor, and then you're fine.
Lotus
right?
Field is completely busted. It's so good. It's the best deck in Pioneer by a mile.
Yeah.
I am completely disappointed by only having 1 in the field, Fletcher Johnson, who did make day 2. Lotus Field is so good. What are people doing? All you have to do is practice Infinity and then come up with ways to cheat against all the major decks, and you're good. Come on, people. Put in some effort. Jesse, why don't you play Lotus? What's the matter with you?
I do like I had a period where I played Lotus for like 3 or 4 weeks, and it was a lot of fun. But then I never won anything, so I was like, all right, never mind.
No, okay. So, aspiring Lotus players, Jesse Robkin has a Patreon. It's not for you. She doesn't have the tech. She doesn't have the insight. Lotus is so good.
Joe, all dozen Lotus Field players in the chat are gonna unsubscribe from my Patreon. You're ruining me. All dozen of them.
Well, at least I can say I accomplished something today. All right. Hobbs, Dykeman, both back in the chairs. Neither one playing Lotus. Sad as it is to see. Plus, if they were playing Lotus, I'd actually be able to, provide meaningful insights instead of just trying to, manage my way through these rounds. But all right, here we go. Top. Okay, Jonathan taking a mulligan, maybe a legitimate one. Maybe he had 12 cards in his hand. We'll never know. Steven looks content. Oh, couldn't see. Now I wonder, does Jonathan have an extra set of all these cards? because we were just playing, some of these players playing the same cards in multiple formats. We know Jonathan doesn't because he had basically his entire deck arrayed on the table, swapping cards back and forth. But some of these players have got to have extra copies, right, of the overlaps.
I would be willing to bet money that Raja Suleiman has more than 8 copies of Hollowed Fountain.
Yeah, that seems likely. All right, Jonathan taking a second try at an opening hand here.
Speaking of Fletcher, I do think he had the best deck list photo of the entire tournament. All 3 decks laid out on top of each other with no discernible order.
I mean, maybe that's just all one deck. It wasn't a Battle of Wits deck. That was his actual 3 decks.
Yeah.
All right. We are underway. Okay. Here we go. Match number 2. Opens with a Thoughtseize, looks at 6, 3 land, Fable, Bone Crusher, and I don't know what the other card is.
That's a Fatal Push.
Fatal Push. All right. Yeah. Good job, Jesse.
Thank you. If there's one thing I know, it's these random alternate arts.
That's excellent.
Professor. I see them all the time.
Because if there's 100 things I don't know, it's what all of the different cards are in the alts. And there is a Thoughtseize off the top.
Oh, man, look at this. A pair of stealing each other's fables with Thoughtseize.
This is a legitimate mirror. Actually, Jonathan left with more quality in hand than Steven, just being up a Bone Crusher instead of a land.
And having a pair of creature lands as the lands that he has.
Yeah. All shinies. Jonathan, you're killing us.
I need to put some sunglasses on here.
All right, so both players playing face up for the moment at least.
Love this move.
Yeah. No reason not to, really. Instead of having to write everything down. Okay. Bankbuster off the top. 2 nice draws for Jonathan to start things off.
Yeah, winning the top deck war seems key to this matchup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it probably happens. I mean, all these black-red decks are exhausting each other's resources with regularity.
Mm-hmm. Also, Dykeman with more discard in his main deck has more dead draws once we get to this point. Like if he draws one of these duresses or even the Go Blank wouldn't. Actually, the Go Blank would be pretty good here.
Yeah, it'd be all right. As the duress does pick up the Fatal Push, Jonathan's just going to pick up card off the top. And most likely just make a land drop and pass. All right, so nothing much entering play. The creature's not on the board, but both players establish positions. If Dykeman's first real play is Channel Takanuma, I mean, you would think he'd be very far behind. And I guess he's not in great shape, but still, he's getting away with it.
Yeah, with no creatures in his graveyard, he's really, really hoping that Takanuma hits.
But I don't see – you can't pass up this chance, right? With nothing else going on, you have to do it.
It looks like there's a spell in his as the 3rd card, but I'm not sure what it is.
Well, maybe we'll find out right here. His Kroxa is fired off for Jonathan.
Trying to decide whether to channel the Takanuma in response.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess you'd rather pitch a creature than Takanuma itself to avoid the 3 damage, but if it misses, you're really in bad shape.
All right, let's spin the wheel.
Uh-oh.
No.
Wow.
Oh, Jonathan.
Beating here.
Probably feeling pretty good at this point.
I would think. So, Steven, unknown card or the Fatal Push. It's a Bitter Triumph. Okay, well, that's out of here. And this got bad very, very quickly. There is the Go Blank. Okay.
There it is. Oh, I was just thinking that would be such a good draw here. Not such a good draw, but it's certainly one of the better draws.
No, it's great because it gets the Kroxa out of here, which otherwise was going to come back fairly soon. So this is that was really huge for Steven. And now, okay, there's a Fatal Push, which can actually handle one of the variety of creatures that Jonathan has. Does Mutavault come across here? It certainly could. He could draw. He could even attack with a Bankbuster, although that seems unlikely.
Yeah, that would involve activating Mutavault in order to crew it, which seems not necessarily the most mana efficient.
Yeah. All right. Well, now Steven's got a clock. Jonathan picks up a card and a blocker, and this is I mean that was 2 above average draws in a row for Steven to try and stay in this.
Absolutely. Notably, Jonathan, one of his 2-mana removal spells to kill this thing would be his Power Word Kill, which cannot target it.
Well, that's fun. That's fun. And we dumping the whole hand. Okay.
Starting Inti. Is that a Shieldred? Yeah, it looks like a Shieldred and something.
Well, that would be great, as that would mean that the Archfiend isn't going to actually just win the game in 3 attacks. Also, it would make it harder for Steven to survive on the defense. It's a Shielded and a Bankbuster with the treasure. All right. Well, there's everything. Hobbs completely face up with a crowded board. Steven with 1 whole creature. And you can't really hold back if you're Steven with this Archfiend, the draw. So here's a Kroxa back.
Wow, what a draw. Turning on Revolt to kill Shieldred.
Yeah, that's really insane. And making up for the damage.
We're going to also deal 2 damage because the Archfiend.
Yeah.
Has Steven just pulled ahead in this game? Jonathan has more resources, but
yeah, more by kind of a ludicrous
holy
margin.
cow. I was looking through the deck to see if there was any way he could trigger Revolt, and that's I think the only card in his entire deck that triggers Revolt automatically.
My goodness. Maybe Blood Tithe into Blood, I guess, would be another way to do it, but yeah,
he didn't have another card to discard.
Oh, you're right. No, so that maybe have been it. And now Jonathan's at 6. Is he dead? Steven's not dead.
The best draw in Steven's deck.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. You generally play 3-4 copies of Kroxa, right? No, that was a one of.
No, he's playing 1.
Yeah, I know. He's playing 1. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, Jonathan can't even believe this.
Jonathan's facing down lethal in the air if he can't draw something with this Bankbuster right here. It can be a fatal push because he will have Revolt off of the treasure token from the Goblin.
Sure.
Is that it? That's not the face of someone who has a removal spell for the.
It really. It's Steven.
Look at Dykeman leaning back.
Yeah.
Cannot believe it. Runner. Go blank into Archfiend into Kroxa.
Yeah.
And what's more, he can bring back the Kroxa next turn. So even if Jonathan does have a removal spell for this Archfiend, what is this?
Is it?
Oh, copying the Bankbuster for 1 more draw step, and that's it.
Oh my goodness!
Dykeman pulls off the upset from
nod of his head there. Yeah, I mean that's the one where you can't even believe it either. When it's your deck that did these, you're just the odds of this were so low. And Steven Dykeman is now 1 game away from the championship.
That is how great players are made. Not only are they, really good at finding their edges when they're ahead, but they are always prepared to make the most of some fortunate top decks, because Magic at the end of the day is also a game of variance on top of being a game of skill. And if you can't capitalize on those things, like say, for example, he had end of turn fatal pushed the Goblin Shaman token when he had 1 mana up after the Fable came down. He untapped, draws the Archfiend, slams it. He's then dead to the Shieldred, but he doesn't. He holds on to that because he can get more value out of it later. It looks awkward at first because he has to tap out for the Archfiend, but then just perfectly sequenced on the hands of Dykeman.
And if you're Jonathan Hobbs, how do you recover from that? I mean, you felt like you had this game, maybe not won, but you're just completely undone over the course of a couple turns from an empty-handed opponent who who missed on Takanuma. I mean, you at that point you had to feel very strong, and for Hobbs, he's just got to pull it together. And this is something we expect of our players, and you just have to be able to do it. But that doesn't mean it's easy to recompose yourself after something like that, and have to just buckle down and reshuffle your deck and reconsider your sideboard, and then just jump back in.
If you're Jonathan Hobbs in this case, you have to, it doesn't matter that your back's against the wall. You have to treat it like it is one match at a time, one game at a time, and you're going to take things as they come, and like the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single game win, right?
Yeah, well, it's going to have to for Jonathan Hobbs to win this tournament. He's got a ways to go now. He needs to win 2 games in a row of Pioneer, and then needs to win a match of Standard. As for Steven Dykman, if we have our profile slides up while the players are re-sideboarding again here, we can take a look at the deck list. That'll work too. You can see where we're at. We did see Go Blanks play a big role there. We saw Croxa play. I mean, everything. I mean, Steven got absolutely every inch he could out of the cards he had access to, because there wasn't a lot of them. And they, he's number 1 for a reason. If we can put up his slide now, if we have it. Steven Dykman, our number 1 overall player in the power rankings, looking to become, in addition to that, our champion. Trying to show up to people. Some of his peers thought he was above average in the field, but not the top. And Steven says, you know what? You might be wrong, because I bet on myself, and I'm here to take it down.
Yeah. I mean, this just goes to show how scientific these power rankings are.
Oh, God.
This is real data.
Yeah, well, some of it is.
And Dykman is 1 game win away in this match from taking home the trophy and proving why he's the first overall on this leaderboard.
Mm-hmm. All right, and Hobbs coming up from near the bottom, I believe 14th, if we have his slide. Jonathan Hobbs, mostly by virtue of not playing as many events as the other players did this year, didn't come up hugely strong in our power rankings, but 14th overall towards the bottom of the field. But still, these are 16 of the most capable players in the Midwest region of the country. So 14th overall does not mean Jonathan Hobbs is, it's no slight to him. He's a strong player. He has been for years. He's won Star City events. He's won Nerd Rage events, and he is here, and he may need to win the next 2 games and the next match after that, but that's something he's certainly capable of. We are going down to the finish here.
And this is evidence for why science isn't real, because the 14th overall player has made it to the finals of this tournament. So these power rankings, the science of them, don't believe it. Okay.
Well,
the stats are lying to you.
You're just going to say whatever works.
Back up. I'm going to talk about the science being right.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's just go back down the table so I can get slammed for my work any further.
Both sides.
But anyway, we do hope you viewers at home got some enjoyment out of the power rankings this year. We did put a little work into that, and I do appreciate the. I actually sent out 5 polls to players on the series, and actually got back 6. So instead, I was hoping for a couple, and we sent out 5, and one person shared it with someone else. We got 6 responses back to make up the pure rankings. That was much appreciated, and it went into a weighted category of that system. So that was fun to do. I don't know if it's very meaningful, but it was cool to see, have something else to look at. And we're ready now for game 2 of Pioneer. Can Steven Dykman end the tournament right now, or is Jonathan Hobbs going to earn the right to battle on? 7 cards in hand looks good for Jonathan, so let's go.
Whew. And it is 7 cards this time, right?
Hopefully so. I mean, it wasn't a mulligan, but that doesn't mean he actually had 7. But yeah, presumably so. All right. Steven Dykman reveals a whole pile of 2-drops and a Liliana, along with 2 lands, so able to get things started, hoping to draw 1 land next few turns, which is completely reasonable. And Hobbs faced with a choice. We don't know his hand, but what do you like?
Yeah, it's a really tough call. I mean, Liliana seems pretty annoying if it's in play, but it sort of depends on how much removal he has. Mm-hmm. I lean towards taking the Bank Buster here, because that's the card that represents the most total cards when all is said and done. But yeah, I guess the other option, the Bone Crusher, is the most efficient sort of curve out answer to a lot of what Jonathan can do.
All right, let's see. Blood Crypt tap to open things, and Jonathan draws Croaks on turn 1. And yeah, Blood Tithe to open things. So getting rid of the Bone Crusher means his Blood Tithe is able to become active. Steven's matches.
Yeah. You much rather trade your Blood Tithe with their Blood Tithe than lose it to a Bone Crusher Giant and have the 4/3 come down later.
Right. All right. So trade is offered and accepted. All right. Fable. And things are moving fast and furious here in game number 2.
It's a nice, refreshing thing. No time to think now. Just play my cards on curve.
All right. Liliana for Steven to wipe out the Goblin Shaman.
This is a sequence that I really liked in Standard, was responding to their Fable with your Liliana on turn 2, because then you tick up the next turn, and then you're ready to edict away the Fable when it flips.
All right. Well, Jonathan is going to dispatch the Liliana with the Bone Crusher, and then follow up the second. So both players had double Blood Tithe, and Steven flooding on bank
out for Dykeman.
Steven flooding on Bankbusters. He might have 2 more.
Oh man,
which would be quite bad.
Yeah.
And a shielded. He needs at least a land in order to play.
There are some games where you'd be happy to see 3 Bankbusters over the course of the game, but usually that's not true on turn 3.
No. All right, does find the 4th land, but the virtue of it being the next card down instead of the top card costs Steven the ability to play Bankbuster and Blood Tithe this turn, and that's going to allow Jonathan some real capabilities here, some real opportunities.
Jonathan somewhat lower on resources, but has the upper hand on the board.
Okay, Bitter Triumph takes 3 and comes. Yeah, takes 3 and comes across Bankbuster for zone. So 1 Bankbuster for Jonathan with 4 land in play, much more useful than the 3 for Steven, who does have Shieldred, and Jonathan's empty-handed. So okay, is that the play then? I think he has Shieldred.
If he has a Shieldred, actually, Shieldred is not the play because it can get the Blood Tithe can get copied next turn and kill the Shieldred.
You're right.
So he's in a bad spot, sort of regardless. And keep in mind, Jonathan does have the Bone Crusher on Adventure right now.
Yeah.
So Jonathan's certainly in the driver's seat at the moment, despite more material in Dykeman's hand.
Jonathan seems way ahead, but all of about 8 minutes ago, I feel like I said that, and then he lost. So, but yeah, I mean, he has to be thrilled to see this for Steven's turn.
Oh, yeah. This is not, as they call it, a show of strength.
All right, there's a pass, and Reflection's active, and Jonathan can go nuts here with his, I guess it's not a huge attack force, but it's certainly a significant one, and build up more cards. Lots going on here. Lots to like. Perhaps wondering whether Bone Crusher should be committed to the board or just copy. Okay, so if attack here, then Bone Crusher probably is following. Yeah. Okay, we're already at the point again where Steven needs to have some miracle series of draws, and I don't even know what they are, but
yeah, it can't even start with an Archfiend this time because, again, copying the Blood Tithe and then sacking it to the Archfiend. Jonathan will lose 2 life for that, but that's it. And I don't think there are any sweepers of any kind in Dykeman's board.
No. And there is lethal damage in play for Jonathan. So Steven can't, if the turn is spent just drawing on Bankbuster and hope crossing your fingers, then if he comes up dry, then he will lose this game. All right. Reflection goes down. That's a start. That actually does a pretty decent job.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Because even if it dies to a removal spell, it can crew the Bankbuster in response and still have a blocker.
Yeah. And getting rid of the Reflection paired with the Blood Tithe Harvester was really the biggest fear to unlocking the rest of Steven's hand.
Yeah, because now the Shieldred will be safe to come down if that's in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, we thought he couldn't win last game, and he somehow came back. So we'll see if he can double up that magic, or if they're going into a game 3.
If Steven wins this game, also he's going to need a nickname of some sorts regarding, coming back here. These 2 games. This would be remarkable. I mean, Hobbs is obviously not interested in such things as the Blood Tithe will take down the Bone Crusher, and the Reckoning Bankbuster does get crewed up to be able to block. So does Hobbs offer a trade here? I think the answer is yes. Steven accepts again.
I think it's worth the trade because the Bankbuster has 2 counters, so you're denying them 2 cards essentially, and you've still got your own Bankbuster left.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you can start filtering. I would consider holding this land if you to start filtering with the blood, but if you have a Shieldred or something you want to play,
right?
Oh, the Kroxa.
Okay. Yeah.
Ooh.
So this leaves him just a 2 mana up to draw off a Bankbuster. No mana for blooding this turn. And Steven throws away another Bankbuster. But now the Kroxa in play. That's a big deal. Shieldred is great, but it's
if Dykeman draws a land, he can deploy both the Bankbuster and the Shieldred, which gives him a free block on the Kroxa without having to throw away his Shieldred.
Mm-hmm.
Which could be enough to stabilize.
Yeah. I don't know if that happened. I think he drew Fable. So it might be choice of Fable plus Bankbuster or Shieldred, in which case I think it's probably Shieldred. I mean, Jonathan's got so much draw power. It's bad either way. Steven's going to think this over for a minute, try and figure out what's the best way to approach this, but it's all bad. He just needs to find the best he can.
Skillfully drawing in response.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mr. Hobbs, do you have what it takes to bring us to game 3? It's not going to take a lot. One Bear Triumph already expended.
He does still have that Mutavault.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
All right, Fable down. So that's a 6-point attack plus Steven loses a card, loses half his life.
Yeah, surely you just tank this 6.
Mm-hmm.
Because your route to victory has to start with keeping the Shieldred in play.
Yeah. And
Now,
Jonathan
the Bankbuster in hand represents another 2 life to gain.
Mm-hmm.
We blooding? Well, it's another 2 life.
All right, Graveyard Trespasser. That's another way for life total exchanges there. Going in Jonathan's favor. And let's see, and the Mutavault's there to block the Shieldred as well. If Jonathan chooses to do so, he's obviously not going to want to connect on him. It's a lot to manage. I mean, that's kind of what these mid-range decks are about, right? It's just, being the player that more often, more efficiently uses your mana, using your cards, accumulates cards. It's just, there's so many things going on, especially on Jonathan's side of the board.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say using your cards effectively is probably slightly more important than using your mana, like you saw in the last game with Steven holding his Fatal Push, even though it would have been more mana efficient.
Mm-hmm. All right, that looked like Thoughtseize and Takanuma, which Takanuma is discounted 1.
Yeah. So you can get back one of those Blood Tithe Harvesters, the one that's still left. Finds a Kroxa, which
because the Bloods of the Graveyard Trespasser are unlikely to have much of an impact at any point here. Steven trying to figure out what he can do. It is going to be Blood Tithe Harvester. It would be great if he could attack, but that's asking a lot.
Yeah, I don't think he can. With 2 Mutavaults in play, the Trespasser, and this Bankbuster is going to make a token that can crew it, so... In fact, it might just be lethal right off the bat. I haven't done the math.
Yeah.
Nice thing about commentating these instead of playing them is you don't have to do the math.
No, often you're incentivized to not do the math because that's just a good way to make yourself look stupid. But Bankbuster obviously could come in and Kroxa. That'd be the 2 biggest creatures to get blocked. Trespasser and 2 Mutavaults would be 7. And Graveyard Trespasser hitting for 1. That's actually 8.
Is that not quite?
That actually
looks... Now you're doing the math, Joe.
No, I know, and so I'm probably wrong. It's probably just lethal. But based on the last game, Hobbs will figure out an attack, and then Steven will just win the game. But now what's going on? We're rearranging the tokens. Okay, we got a pilot there. This is pretty okay. The 2 biggest creatures are definitely Kroxa. And you know what I didn't count is Steven has to have a spell to discard to the Kroxa also.
Oh, that's true. Well, he has a Thought Seize in his hand.
That's true. Jonathan doesn't know that though.
Oh, sure.
So if there is it's probably, is it Kroxa or everything? Is that possible? I don't know if I want to.
He does need to not die on the crackback.
Right. No, but he's also getting close to the point where the Shieldred ability will kill him even without an attack. So he can't dawdle here. He needs to get this over with.
Yeah.
If I'm in Jonathan Hobbs' seat, I cannot believe this right now because I have an attack that doesn't kill my opponent unless he has a land in hand. But if I go for it, I very likely die on the swing back, and he's a point short. He's trying to. Oh my goodness!
And Dykeman has another 4 life coming back the next turn from cracking the blood.
Yeah, and Dykeman has. If Jonathan Hobbs doesn't attack, Dykeman can bring back his Kroxa.
Oh, and if he doesn't have a spell,
yeah, and
so
Jonathan
he might have to just throw away his Trespasser in order to.
Kroxa. So is there another potential attack then? In addition to just Kroxa and everything, could it also be Kroxa plus Graveyard Trespasser and leave everything else back? Maybe that's the way to go. That gives up the Graveyard Trespasser, but you almost might have to do it. What a wild Jonathan is counting. What is he doing? He's counting everything now.
I don't think either player is in the comfiest spot at this point.
No.
I guess Dykeman gets to just say, if you have it, you have it. But
yeah, this is absolutely not one of the spots where Mathis for blockers turns out to be true. It's obviously all on Jonathan here as the attacking player to figure this out. And if my count is correct, which it may not be. And okay, Jonathan's he's gonna blood.
He's cracking a blood.
Yeah, he doesn't have it yet, and he's gonna try and find a spell.
Oh, this is so risky though.
That's a hive, I think. Now, as long as Shieldred survives combat, Jonathan would. I guess he gains a life from Graveyard Trespasser attacking.
Oh, what a mess!
All right, so we've had enough time here. Let's figure this out. So the 2 biggest creatures, Kroxa and Bankbuster. Trespasser effectively attacks for 4. 2 Mutavaults is 8. There's nothing. I guess if Jonathan played a fresh creature and then could attack with a pilot, pilots are 1/1s or 0/1s. They're 1/1s.
Pilots
right?
are 1/1s.
Yeah. So if Jonathan, no, he can't do that either because he needs the Mutavaults.
Yeah, he has a treasure though, I think, right, from cracking.
Yeah, he has 1 treasure.
So he has the man. If it was a 2-man, if it was a Blood Tithe Harvester, exactly.
Here comes everything. Oh my goodness. There's the discard, and I think Steven Dykman is going to win the tournament on
No
this.
way. No way.
Is it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Yeah. Okay. All right. We okay.
5,
There was Steven missed the graveyard
6.
trespasser, but Jonathan's got it, and it's
No. Oh my God.
That's it. That's if we counted right. This is done right, Steven.
Can we get
I think it's
Steven just won, right? Oh
Steven just won. Steven has got this. Let's get confirmation
he's no
because
longer a Dyke man. He's a Dyke goat.
Yeah. That was absolutely stunning.
You've got to be kidding me.
That was what a phenomenal end of the tournament. That Steven Dykman comes back from 2 games, both. I think you agree. It looked fairly bleak.
Yeah, he was losing both of those games.
Yeah.
Like just incredibly and so patient with the Shieldred, waiting until he got the Blood Tithe Harvester off the battlefield,
Yeah. Everything he had to
channeling that Takanuma instead of playing the Bankbuster and trying to draw and gain life. That
was phenomenal. That was one that for years to come, Steven Dykman can go back and watch this and say like this. He might watch this replay and think he's going to lose and be like, "Did I win this? I don't even remember," because that was so.
How do I win this game again?
and for Jonathan Hobbs, who did not appear to my eye to actually make an error at the end there, things just lined up precisely in a way that he had to commit himself. Being 1 damage short, he bloods, he doesn't get there, he hopes, and then you're still hoping that there's a land in Steven's hand, and there isn't. And that's it. We're going to take a minute before we have Steven Dykman available to talk to us, but Steven is the 2023 NRG Championship winner.
That's got to be one of the best thought seizes in NRG history. Just the one in your hand that you can discard to Kroxa.
Yeah, it didn't even cost mana. It was still phenomenal. Wow.
What a season for Dykman to go for like back-to-back winning the first 2 tournaments, finishing out as the MVP on the year, and then coming in here first overall seed by the very scientific power rankings, and just closing it out. I mean, what an impressive showing. I am just blown away.
Yeah, well, I'm sure is too. I mean, if he needs a couple minutes.
By the way, defeating last year's oh wait, no, that was Jonathan, right? It's been a long day. I'm already confused, but
you're right. It was Jonathan took out Raja. Yeah, you're right. And Steven beat Matthew Hoey, who has also won this event twice.
That's true.
And then in kind of the earlier era, and then comes across and finishes. Yeah, I think we heard during the break that there was maybe one day this year when Steven was not on top of the leaderboard for NRG. There was one day where his lead was eclipsed and he got it back on Sunday. Yeah, so 12 hours, I'm told.
Not even a full day.
Right. I don't know how that was determined, but yeah. So apparently 12 hours this year, Steven Dykman was not in first place on the leaderboard and finishes up the year by winning the championship. So
this has to be the most dominant showing anyone's ever had on the NRG series. I mean, only like back-to-back wins in a single weekend is something that very few players have come even close to. And MVP, I don't know how many MVPs who also won the championship there are, but just all 3 of those accomplishments in the same year, just absolute dominant performance by Dykman.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, he's making his way over here. If we let's go ahead and put up the prize slide while he's sitting in the chair. Take a look at what he actually goes home with here. Steven Dykman, our first place overall winner, $6,000 Pro Tour invite, and he gets to come back to 2004 championship next year and try and defend. Steven Dykman is in the booth. Steven, we could ask all kinds of questions. Congratulations to you. We'll start at the end.
Yeah.
Those last 2 games looked rough.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling some of the guys walking away, I kind of can't believe I won either one. I mean, I just spent both games just miles behind, and he obviously flooded when I needed him to flood, and couldn't quite get through the last points. So pretty nuts.
Well, You flooded too. You just
yeah.
flooded on
I mean,
Bankbusters.
game one was so brutal, man. His thoughts, he's
Yeah.
into one of his 2 Bankbusters. He's on 2.
Mhm.
I'm on 4. It was just like really
Yeah.
brutal to fall
Right.
behind his. But yeah, the go blank off the top was really huge game one. I mean, it was like 3 perfect draws in a row, like go blank,
Right.
and then the Croxa, and yeah, it was just everything
The
kind of
only way to
spiraled.
trigger revolt in that spot, the Croxa, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yep. So that was pretty insane. I was obviously the channeling the Takenuma Croxa would have been really good earlier. That was kind of the idea when I channeled the Takenuma, was that if I hit the Croxa, discarding Croxa to Croxa and then getting a replay would have been really insane. But he showed up just at the right time. So
yeah, everything kind of happened just at the right time there. And then so at the end, on the last turn of the last game there, Jonathan's contemplating an attack. Were you? You're probably, I mean, you could count it out. You're probably realizing if he sends everything that you're going to win.
Yeah. He was counting it on the table himself and it already announced, so it's only 8. And I'm like, I'm just like literally looking down, not even looking at it. I'm just trying to not posture anything. And, he eventually said, screw it. Do you have a land? And, here we are. So.
And I mean, how fast is your heartbeat going during that sequence when he's counting it out? When you're thinking like,
I mean, I was like, at the time he starts counting it out, it's like pretty obvious he won't beat me. If it's obviously has nothing, and he's debating if he should go for it or not. So it's very clear that his hand is just all garbage, like either hand hate or lands. And so I'm just hoping he'll make the attack, because it was 1 point short, and then I had him on the crackback. So pretty insane, pretty insane.
How does it feel? I mean, so you started this year with a double back-to-back tournament win. You finished the year as the MVP. In fact, you spent almost all but 12 hours of the year as the MVP of the entire tournament series. And now here you are. You just waltz your way right through and 2-0 your finals opponent. I mean, how does it feel?
I mean, really good. Really good. Yeah, I have not played on the PT for like 7 years, so I'm very, very excited to be going back.
Hometown too.
Yeah. And yeah, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm thrilled. This year could not have gone any better for me, honestly. It could have, I guess, had a few more top 8s in there. I did get a few top 16s where I would have liked top 8s, but I will gladly lose all those matches to have these. So yeah, really, really happy.
All right, Steven Dykman,
congratulations.
For Swish Gaming, you want to shout out your teammates, your squad? I know you don't.
No
one goes to these events solo. So who helped you out? Who helped you accomplish this?
It was really funny, actually. We had a 4-man testing team for this event with 4 competitors from the event. So that was like that's pretty bizarre, obviously. And then we kind of had a 5th. Raja was in there with us too, but Derek Davis, Kyle Gonzalez, and Chris Smith were my main testing team, and 2 of those are Switch members, and then 1, obviously Derek is a Worlds competitor. So it was really cool to get to play with him, and I'm excited now. I can finally get in the coveted Pro Tour Discord channel that Derek has alluded to so many times. But gotta be queued to be in there. But now I can finally join that and be part of that. So that's pretty cool.
Well, you certainly earned it, Steven Dykman. Congratulations, man.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Congratulations, Steven.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Jesse Robkin, that was quite a show. The last couple games and the last couple hours, really. We kind of wrap up the year here. We're done with the events. What's something, if you think back on this event or this year at Nerd Rage Gaming, what's something that you'll reflect on a year or two from now?
I think just the number of new players that showed up this year and like really made their mark on the series circuit. I think several of the competitors in this year's championships were not high on the leaderboard last year. And just like how many of these like dedicated players just like traveling to all these events and getting together on the Swish team and all these other teams that it's remarkable how much how many. Like it really is the year of the Gen Z takeover. Although Dykman, the Boomers had the last laugh there.
That's right.
in the last match, but yeah.
All right. Well, Jesse, thanks for being with us. It was nice to have your insights and your commentary here. Hopefully, we'll bring you back here again. That is it. Let's hit the schedule one more time. Well, we don't need the whole schedule, just the next event. We got, this will work too. Next event, if you want to get started on next year, trying to get into the NRG Championship or just wanting to play some competitive Magic, you might be able to play against any of the players in the field here today at this event, February 17th, 18th in Chicagoland. If you want to come out and practice the Pro Tour, we know Steven Dykman will probably be there preparing for the Pro Tour. That's a week before the actual event. And all the rest of the events, the showdowns, auto qualify for the championship. So if that's your goal, that's how you can do it.
If you want to be the player who wins the first 2 tournaments of the year, that's the weekend to do it right there.
That's true. That has to. Yeah, it's locked in. You have to be at that one.
If you see what Dykman did and think I could do that, prove it.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. All right. So a lot goes into bringing these events to you both online and in person, and we appreciate people watching. If you want to follow, get notified when we're back next year. We do appreciate that. I want to mention some of the staff involved. We had our event coordinator, Libby, and the judge staff of Mark Nason and Steve Zwanger, a couple of NRG employees who stood out and helped a lot with this event, Haviva Goodman and Dakota Clark. We had our commentators this weekend, Drake Sasser, Devin O'Donnell, Dominic Harvey, Jesse Robkin, and myself, Joe Lissette. We are all here representing Norman Cohen, the owner and director of NRG Gaming. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you back next month.